Hello, BookTube. The rotten experiences that I had yesterday morning, compounded with rotten experiences that I have had periodically throughout the day today. I know that weeks are not sentient beings. They can't have intentions. They are not things on their own. They are arbitrary distinctions of time that we create. Nevertheless, yesterday and today are starting to make me think that the week has it in for me. And that's always a terrible feeling. that really feels unbeatable, especially since circumstances make it necessary for me to go out and about in the world. They simply do. I walk my little bean as many times during the day as she wants to go out. That necessarily makes me vulnerable. The world can also impinge on me. There are gas mains, electrical wires that can go wrong and require loud, stupid work crews. And also, every once in a while, there are errands that take me out of Hyde Cottage completely. And this week is going to have more of those than I thought it would. And it's pretty clear to me the shape those errands are going to take. It's pretty clear to me that the world is not happy. Uh, I hate this feeling. I just hate it. I know that there are plenty of people out there who work, even God forbid, work in retail. Don't have any say over their schedules. Have to work every minute of their schedule, or they miss a meal, or a couple of meals, or an all important bill. I used to be in that position for 25 years. I was in that position. I know there are people like that, but still, still, uh, I'm I'm still shuddering at the idea that the week might have it in for me. So I thought, on the edge of that, tomorrow morning before 11, I will know one way or another whether or not the week has it in for me. I will know one way or another whether or not this is just random. All these negative things happening at the same time are just random. Uh, so I thought before I take that plunge, I would do a Steve stream since I know that this will pick me up. I know I will enjoy this. The Steve stream will not go against me. I was futzing around a little beforehand with doing a Steve stream on other tech, specifically on Chromebooks. But the Chromebooks are legendary for how bad their visual equipment is. The cameras are just awful. I imagine since a camera is a very complex piece of technology to mount inside the chassis of a laptop, I imagine they're crappy by design to keep the price down. And I don't know just how much more quality I'd be getting if I spent money, actual money, on a Chromebook. It seems kind of ridiculous to me to do. And I've certainly seen my share of the more honest tech channels who say only a fool would spend laptop money on a Chromebook, considering all the limitations you're buying with the tech. Uh, I don't know if it's that or if it's just the week is going against me and the cameras on the Chromebooks would look better on any other week. But I tested a whole bunch of them with the idea of maybe doing a Steve stream on a Chromebook, and none of the cameras looked anywhere. I mean, this camera is not anything to write home about, but none of the cameras were anywhere near as good as this. The one thing I did not test is a Chromebook on my iPhone. Just pop this on a tripod and do the Steve stream on this. Camera on this thing is perfectly fine. And if it can do Steve streams as well as videos, then it's a moot point. Then it doesn't matter what the Chromebook can do. Eventually, I decided leave well enough alone and do your Steve stream right here on the device that you have always used. Uh, and I wanted to start the video before we go to the chat. I always think about these things as videos for people who aren't getting to the chat ahead of time and might still want to watch a video. I always think I should have front matter throat clearing ahead of time. One of those things was a funny message that I got automated from NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, from their website. I got a funny message today saying you're almost there, keep going, which is consoling in a way because it means they're not keeping Big Brother style watch over everything we do. Because I finished NaNoWriMo 2 days ago and marked it as finished. I went into the settings on it and marked it as completed. So they obviously don't know that, and that is possibly comforting. Another bright spot on the horizon. I don't know how many of you saw. I did a team up video with Hannah from Hannah's Books. We both looked at the New York Times Book Review for this last Sunday. It's just strolled through it. A number of people have said we did a couple of videos like that, and a number of people have emailed me over the intervening months and said that they really like that. They'd love to see it back again. So that would be great. Not everybody is going to be satisfied. I noticed before I came onto the Steve stream that video has at least one comment, and one of the comments on that video is that 38 minutes, which was about the length of the video once we got past the chit chat, barely scratched the surface. Hannah just not to pick fights, and I don't want to draw negative karma down on me, but Hannah and I did not barely scratch the surface. If you can watch that video and think that these two people together barely scratched the surface of talking about one issue of the New York Times book review, then I don't know what you're seeing. You're certainly not seeing the video that we made. I'm not making any great claims for myself, but Hannah doesn't barely scratch the surface of anything. So little things like that, just a dyspeptic comment that was made just to ruin somebody's day. That is the kind of thing I'm talking about. That looks like the world is conspiring to be that way. And that's okay if I'm sitting here on the fainting couch with the bean, because I've got a million things I can do, a million ways to console myself, to perk myself up. Writing, I absolutely love writing. But tomorrow, I have to expose myself to the outside world. Not in the way I usually do when I am closing the drapes here at Hyde Cottage, because who wears pants? But not in that usual way, but instead in the metaphorical way, where I open myself up to just having a miserable morning. Now, there's no chance, as far as I can tell, there's no chance that even a miserable morning will extend into the afternoon. So if I have a miserable morning, you'll quite literally be the first ones to hear about it. But in the meantime, that teaming up with Hannah was a tremendous bright spot in the day. It always is, talking with a bookish person on my channel. If I had my druthers, I would do that every day. I'd have a different guest every day. But there were a few other high spots that I wanted to take you through before we go to the chat. One of them was in the London Review of Books, the new London Review of Books, which is a terrific long form literary review that is a little bit on the odd side. They are well known for reviewing. They'll let their reviewers review something that's not new. It's not even remotely new. For a while, it was out of control, and you would see 2 or 3 year old books that would get reviews in the London Review of Books. But even in this issue, there's an echo of it. Oliver Cusson reviews 2 books about Alexis de Tocqueville. One is Travels with Tocqueville Beyond America by Jeremy Jennings, which I loved. Thought it was terrific. That's just a couple of months old. The other one is The Man Who Understood Democracy by Oliver Zunz, and that's old. That might be the beginning of this year. I believe I reviewed both of those books. But The Man Who Understood Democracy is not new in any way. But there was another article that really caught my eye, because I'm curious to know what kind of response it will get. Andrew Cockburn reviews a book that we saw on this channel, Road to Surrender, 3 Men and the Countdown to the End of World War II by Evan Thomas, which is about 3 men who were directly involved in the deployment of the 2 atomic bombs that incinerated tens of thousands of innocent civilians, men, women, children, elderly, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Evan's book profiles those 3 men and talks about those events. And Evan Thomas takes a traditionalist American stance about the decision to use nuclear weapons, and says that it was justified because the Japanese military command was intent on fighting to the last man in an island hopping campaign that would have cost at least 1 million GI lives. And that kind of rationale has often been extended to say that, more Japanese lives would have been lost as well. Dropping these horrific weapons on Japanese cities was actually a good thing to do, a humane thing to do. That's absurd. That's absolutely insane. Anyone with a brain in their head knew from the 1940s that was insane. The obvious option that America had at its disposal, the powers that be, the bloodthirsty maniacs who wanted to use these weapons on a city full of civilians as a message to the Russians, lied about their reasons and said their reason was, let's use these weapons because the sheer overawing nature of them, wiping out 60,000 people in the blink of an eye, literally at the speed of light, will force the Japanese to surrender. The overawing nature of it will be completely different than would be the conventional artillery bombardments that we've been doing on their cities for the last year. That's the rationale that they used, and that is completely empty. And people knew that from the 1950s on. You pick a deserted atoll, you divert the whole world's attention to that atoll and give them a time, and you detonate a bomb then. That will have just the same overawing effect, and it won't kill people. It'll kill a lot of other things, but it won't kill humans. And Cockburn rips this book apart. He does it very, very gentlemanly, but he tears apart Evan Thomas's basically his echo of the official United States stance on the morality of using these bombs. He tears it to shreds. At one point, uh, at one point in his review, he says that Thomas's book has one effective part to his book. That at one point, in the most gripping and readable part of his book, is a small feature of the way he draws those pen portraits of those men. But the review itself is a damning condemnation of the book, and by not that much inference, a damning condemnation of Evans as a historian. Cockburn says a couple of times that he doesn't understand what he's doing. So it's utterly thorough and utterly damning. And I want to know two things about it. One, does it make Evan Thomas respond in the letters column of the next London Review of Books? Keeping in mind what we've said on this channel, but a lot of you might be new, that there's never a good circumstance for an author to do that. That should never happen. If you are an author, you should never, ever do that. You should never write in defense of your book. Far less charter a plane ticket, fly all the way to the doorstep of a critic of yours, and leave a bomb on their doorstep. Oh, wait, it was a book. It was a copy of a book. Might as well have been a bomb. You certainly should never do that. Your work is out there in the world. You are not its protector. It is meant to stand or fall on its own. If a reviewer gets a factual thing wrong about your book, says this book does not cover the Russian invasion of Manchuria, when there are 4 chapters in your book that are devoted to the Russian invasion of Manchuria, then it's okay to object to that, but you have your publisher do it. You have your publisher write to the editor of the London Review, not to the letters column, but to the editor saying, please print a correction. Your reviewer was wrong. That won't be as high profile. It certainly won't be as emotionally satisfying as writing an angry letter, but it never redounds well to the author to write a letter defending their work. So question number 1 that I have about that piece is, will Evan Thomas write a letter defending his book? And question number 2 is, down the line, will the publisher, who's the publisher of this thing? Elliott and Thompson in the UK, and I don't know who's doing it in the US. I don't remember. Uh, Down the line, when it's time for them to mock up a paperback, will they take that one piece? There's one half of one line where Cockburn says some positive adjectives to use about one tiny aspect of Thomas's book. Will they pull those out of this review and put them on the jacket of the paperback, either because they want the LRB's name in their list of blurbs, or just to stick it to Cockburn? Will they do that? I've seen that done. That has actually been done to me and almost every reviewer that I know. I'm not going to fault book publicists. They are the hardest working people in the book world. They are the least appreciated people in the book world. They got to get their funds somehow. But I'd be curious to know. I'll have to follow up on both of those. It'll be easy to follow up on Thomas writing a letter, because if he does, he'll fire it off right away. But that's one bright spot that I wanted to include here. Another bright spot is mail. I got a package in the mail today. I thought we'd open it on camera because I had planned on in addition to the video with Hannah, I had planned on making 4 other videos today. But then nature called. this is definitely TMI, but nature called. I had to go to the bathroom. And some of you who are of a certain age, perhaps 60 or definitely north of 70, might nod your head in recognition when I say that sometimes the little signal at the crosswalk says the train is coming, but it's delayed. You can't leave the crosswalk, but it's not there yet. You just have to sit there. That's all. You just have to sit there. And that literally ate up all the time I had. Maybe not all the time I had. I could experiment with enhanced lighting in some room. I automatically think that the only thing I can do once it's dark in this place is a Stevestream. But if the lighting's okay here for a Stevestream, it's okay for a video. So maybe I need to be less picky about that. But so I didn't make any other videos, including a mail haul. I would have done a mail haul today instead of just opened the mail. But I left this package because I know what this is. This is from the same person who sent me all of those beautiful Iris Murdoch trade paperbacks. I was squeeing about them on camera, while at the same time I was worried that that would give a conflicting impression to all of you who must still abide by rule number one. Rule number one on this channel is don't send me books. But there are loopholes to rule number one. You can send me a book if you have cleared it with me ahead of time, obviously. You can send me a book if I don't know. No, I was going to say you could send me a book if I've made it perfectly clear in a video that I don't have it and I want it, but I could fix that lack between the time when I say that in a video and when you get the book to me. So really, the only way to surefire get around rule number one is to call in store credit at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston. You know I'm going to go there, and you know I'm going to get exactly what I want with your store credit, and you also know that you're going to hear about it. Unlike with other store credits that you might get for other people, buying somebody a $50 store credit at Radio Shack doesn't get you much in the way of direct satisfaction. But if I get store credit at Brattle, you know you're going to get a Brattle book haul out of it. But anyway, the same person sent another box. So let's see what this. Oh goodness gracious! Oh why it's more Iris Murdoch. Uh, uh, okay. Unlike the other package, these are mass market paperbacks. Oh, two of them are lovely. Oh my! So one is Flight from the Enchanter in this old Penguin mass market style, and then these two, which are beautiful, an unofficial rose. Look at the loveliness of that cover. That is just wonderful. In an old orange spine mass market paperback, and a mass market paperback, The Italian Girl, which I got in a trade paperback just yesterday. So now I have a bumper crop of Iris Murdoch. She now has a place. She has a whole shelf of her own. But this package also has Mega Stuff Oreos. That's why it was getting the attention of the Bean, because it's got Mega Stuff Oreos, and she knows those aren't books. She's interested in the package because she knows there's something inside there. But if I open this package and put these on the floor, she wouldn't even touch them. Watch us try to eat them. so she's just curious. That's all. And there you go. So we've got here. Let's get these Mega Stuff Oreos out of them. I don't want them distracting you, baby. Here, let's put those over there. And these books can go on the book pile. And we can toss the LRB. There we go. So that was my opening throat clearing. Some bright spots. I knew already that what was going to be in that box was a bright spot. So now we will turn to the chat and see. I'm gambling everything on you people being a bright spot. I'm gambling everything that you will not bring me down, because this week is going to be bad enough as it is. Okay, but let's see. So everybody's here and everybody's saying hello. Jenny Park says she missed yesterday's Stevestream. Won't happen again. Well, I can always dream. Randy Ray says I got locked in the bathroom earlier. It's pretty much the only thing that hasn't happened to me in the last 2 days. And I'm belly aching about it because everything that's happening to me is relatively minor, and I know that. So I'm not. I'm belly aching because I'm free to do it. All the important stuff is still there. So everybody's saying hi. Bro, it's 110 people here in 18 minutes. That's incredible. I don't think we've ever done that, have we? Randy Ray is back. Steve, when this Stevestream ends, I'm going to make my best BookTube video ever. I'm even going to mention you in it. Well, that would be nice. I always love it when I get mentioned in a video. I certainly prefer that to BookTube videos by people who shall remain nameless, who are obviously responding to me, but they don't want to mention me because they know that I'm a pariah, a leper, an outcast. They know that if they mention me, they might hurt their channel's growth, because the bigger British BookTube channels might be watching and, oh, you like him, do you? Or for some reason, almost all the Australian channels. I do not appear to be popular in Australia, even though I've never been there. So, I don't know what it is, but you don't strike me as the type who would care, which is great. Steve Bronstein says, when I was in high school and college, I worked at Radio Shack for years, even though I had no knowledge or interest in electronics, and a good amount of social anxiety to boot. It was a rough time. Why would you work at radio? No, I mean, I sympathize. But why would you work at Radio Shack if you had no interest in or knowledge of electronics? Why would you even get hired? Did they not care? I, I can't imagine that. Although I know for sure that people get hired at bookstores in the 21st century without having any interest in or knowledge of books, so maybe that's not so amazing. Kevin J.N. says, after your annual Hajj, which is fast approaching, should you return to BookTube, could you possibly expound more on how you recall so much of what you read? I find it frustrating to forget so much. Well, I don't need to wait. I don't need to wait. Uh, Kevin is referring to the fact that I'm going to disappear in about 3 weeks. Uh, but I don't need to wait to tell you. I've said it many times before. It's a muscle. You might not believe that, but then nevertheless, it's true. It's a muscle. The more you exercise it, the better shape it will get in, barring cognitive issues. If you are genetically predisposed, or have health problems, or dietary habits that lead to plaquing on the brain, the poor brain health, brain fuzzing, you might be genetically predisposed to any of those things. In which case, degradation of your memory might never have been all that great, and degradation once you hit 45, 50, something like that, would be natural. But if you don't have that, it's just a question of memory. That's all. It's just a question. It's just a muscle. Balin 321, will you release the novel to the hoi polloi? The novel that Vio Falo that I wrote for NaNoWriMo. Well, the whole thing's written. I just need to. I did not in 2023. I did not get my act together for self-publishing. I just didn't do it. So, and I'm now out of time. So, uh, if I would certainly release it to the public, but it would have to be next year. Randy Ray is back. I watched your video with Hannah right before this one. I subscribed to the print edition Sundays only after watching it. I get David when David Murphy was here. He walked me through subscribing to just the Sunday print New York Times. But I read all of it. I read every word of it and obsess about every word of it. Think about every word of it. It's days before I let it all go. I'm not ready for the new Sunday Times until right before it arrives. Until right before that, I am masticating on the old one. And Orthia NZ says, no Superman on the wall. No, Superman's gone. That's Erasmus, the famed Dutch humanist Erasmus. Moni Doyle says, hello. Randy Ray says, I can be a guest every day. I'm always available. I don't know. Sometimes it seems like you're under the weather. I don't know. I wouldn't want the same guest every day. I could do a guest every day. I'd be happy to do that. I honestly don't know how many. I bet if you looked at my BookTube subscription list, long, it's hundreds and hundreds of channels. But if you looked at that list, if I went through that whole list just from A to Z and sent out an invitation to each one, would you like to do this? I'd be willing to bet that probably 70% of the channels on that list would have nothing to do with me without knowing any reason why. They don't have there isn't any good reason why. They're only going off what they've heard from other people, from mean girl gossip at the high school cafeteria table. That's all they're going on. That would still leave me with 30%. That would be enough to get through a whole year, especially if I added in authors. I meant to do that this year. A lot of author talks on my channel. I just didn't get to it, and now I'm out of time. Hannah's books, long time no see. Yes, we just finished. I promise you that the scratch the surface comment only meant he wanted a longer video. You cannot promise that. You're not a telepath. But I admit, email comments are susceptible to misreadings. The tone is absent from them. All I'm going by is what the comment literally said. It didn't say this wasn't long enough. It didn't say I want more of this. It said you barely scratched the surface, and neither one of us did. So that's all I'm going on. Gola Muad'Dib says, speaking of spreading happiness, I've been watching the Three Stooges at the group home I work at. Saw a guest appearance by Margaret Hamilton in a few episodes. Didn't know she was on that show. She's not the only high-powered guest star, right? Lou G says, I can't fathom why someone would leave a snarky comment on a Hannah video. People can be so rude. Well, Hannah says it wasn't rudeness, so maybe that's true. Maybe it wasn't. 124 people. How is this happening? I have said in the last couple of days, especially privately in emails and Voxers to some of you, I've said that something about these last few Stevestreams, the last 4 or 5 of them, has felt different to me. I've always absolutely loved doing this. But at the end of each one of these last 4 or 5, something has felt different. It's actually felt closer to the glow of having had good company here in the room. That is just bizarre. Joe Spivey. Oh, Joe Spivey, you shouldn't be up this late. You need your beauty sleep. In fact, anyone who's watched your channel will know you badly need your beauty sleep. But what do you have to say? It must be so late. It must be midnight. Hi, Steve. Glad to hear another ranter doing what he does best. Loving Wolf's Orlando, especially when Orlando drive and read and write is exalted. Made me think of this wonderful community. Well, I'm very glad to hear that you're not joining what appears to be a new little fad of disliking Virginia Woolf's Orlando. I'm glad that that's not happening to you. I'm always dumbfounded when I see that. So my first initial reaction is to say to those people, well, try doing it any better. But of course, that's not legitimate. Saying to someone who's criticizing a work of literature, well, can you do better, is not legitimate. Obviously, or you all no critic would have a job. But just in terms of what's going on, it's a fun book. I'm glad you're liking it, very much so. Malcolm St. John says, good evening. Stephen Bronstein says, saw your recent video on Gore Vidal's United States the other day. I think you would also have been a fan of H.L. Mencken if you like Vidal's polemics, but I remember you don't. How come? Um, I've been getting a lot of email about that Gore Vidal video from a lot of people that I tend to forget in the course of a year watch my channel. They never leave comments. They're not part of BookTube. They don't know why I'm part of BookTube. But all of them saw that video. I don't know if that means because they watch everything I do and just don't tell me about it. But I'm getting a lot of email about it when it wasn't all that structured. It was just it was fairly knowledgeable. I know a lot about Gore Vidal, and I've read everything that he's written many times. But still, I don't. But anyway, you would think yes, but it's not true because there's a fundamental difference between Gore Vidal and H.L. Mencken, and it's a note that I strike on this channel many, many, many times. So it's going to be predictable. But I never promised you that I would be a font of originality. H.L. Mencken has nothing but contempt for his readers. Gore Vidal might be condescending and he might be extremely epicene, but he respects your intelligence. He doesn't slow down for you. He doesn't talk down to you. He assumes a kind of fraternity. In his later years, he would have absolutely bridled at the very idea of that. But that is there in his prose, and it's not in Mencken's. That fake bourgeoisie tone of his. Well, here, I'm going to use a big spanking 25-syllable word. Not because I like the word, not because I don't know how to write. Mencken knew how to write, but because I know my rubes are going to think, isn't it funny? Aren't smart people funny? Just you can almost never escape that. His writings about religion are one of the only places where you can escape that. But anyway, Mary B, I picked up a book you recommended, The Key to Kindness, today at the library. Enjoying it so far. Also scored King used in mint condition for $1. King, you don't mean Stephen King. Oh, do you mean Jonathan Ice King for $1? Good Lord. Wow, that can't be. Did your library already turn that around for a sale? Geez, I'd get a copy for $1. I already have a copy. But I'm glad you're liking The Key to Kindness. Matt Sheridan says, good evening, Steve and Frida here. Hi, hey there, my fellow Donahue disciples in the chat. Jared Henderson is here. I see Steve is spreading happiness by talking about nuclear warfare. Well, I never claimed to be spreading happiness. But I was reading from a review. That's all. It scratches a subject that has been bothering me for a long, long time, which is the self-evident absurdity of saying that it was the right thing to do to incinerate 2 cities full of civilians. That is not the right thing to do. I don't care what the circumstances are. That is the wrong thing to do. The worst thing to do. but we'll see if the author responds. Let's see here. Matt Sheridan is responding to Mary B. Jenny Park says he's using fear to keep us in line. Jared, you people aren't in line at all. Max says, I have a coworker who listens to audiobooks at 3 times speed. What do you think of readers who do this? I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all. I have often said that I don't listen to audiobooks because they take some of the controls of perceiving the book out of your hands. Suddenly, someone else is deciding what a character sounds like. Suddenly, someone else is deciding where a character puts emphasis in their language. As a reviewer, I want to decide those things. I don't want somebody else to do that, even if it's self-evident. And if it is exactly one reading only self evident, you're probably reading a dumb book. Uh, but even though I don't understand that, I still allow it. Plenty of people will take in, there's no such thing, first of all, as an auditory learner. I hate that term. I hate the way Zillennials use that term. They just toss it around. It's not my fault that you have a fifth grade reading level. It's your fault that you have a fifth grade reading level. It doesn't make you an auditory reader, an auditory learner. It makes you a bad reader that you could fix. But as although I don't do it, I at least understand it until people start talking about listening to things at three times speed. Then, then it just goes out the window. Then I don't know what you're doing. You're certainly not in any way taking in that book. Uh, let's see. Siva Bronstein says Salman Rushdie mentioned a Calvino story recently that has a man who was severed in half vertically in half because in all became all good and the other half became all evil and both were problematic. Sounded interesting. Yeah, all of Calvino's story premises sound interesting. John Petter, you mentioned a book never written tag, a book about blue whales. I wonder if such a generic title makes sense today, since one could generate it all on ChatGPT. There's no way of knowing, is there? What generic titles? My title for the book was The Vast. That's not a generic title. That's a terrific title. I, I mean, you couldn't Chat GPT could not generate the kind of book that I was thinking of because, of course, I would want it to be full of the insights of the writer. What does it feel like to encounter one of these things for the first time? That's something that a writer will either have an inspired first impression on or will work hard to figure out. Chat GPT would not be able to do either one of those because it can't experience a blue whale in person. It can't do that. It can't go there and do that. I have, and it's unbelievable. Even when you're prepared for it, it's unbelievable. It doesn't seem real. Uh, Matt Sheridan says you may have already mentioned this, but what are your thoughts on the New York Times book review top 10 books of the year? I haven't mentioned it. I saw their list. There's only one year-end list that is worth your attention, and it is coming up fast. It starts on the 1st of December. That's the only one that you need to think about. You don't need to think about anybody else. All the other lists from all these periodicals, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, USA Today, Entertainment Weekly, all of these places, they've got a bunch of people weighing in. You don't know what those people are like. Some of them are probably moderately consistent readers. Some of them are crusty old academics who don't read anything anymore. How many academics do you know? I know plenty of crusty academics who just don't read anymore. They've just given it, I'm sick of these kids these days. So they don't read anything at all, much less new releases from that year. They don't do it. You've got to consult them all. You're gonna pull together all these different people for your year-end list. You have no idea how much swill is in there with the good stuff, unless the list comes from one person who's read it all and has read everything that came before it. Uh, let's see here. Matt Sheridan says TMI, dude. TMI. I don't know what that refers to. Or could it be my bathroom thing? The train schedule. If it doesn't happen to you yet, it will. Take my word for it. Christina says hello. Jenny Park says I can do it at 2.5 speed, but I blame it on being Scottish and we naturally talk quite fast, and audiobooks sound so slow compared to normal conversation. I don't get it. An audiobook is not conversation. It's someone reading the text of a book. If the text of the book is good, you don't want to speed it up any more than you want to slow it down. I simply cannot imagine calling up an audiobook of Moving On by Larry McMurtry or He Knew He Was Right by Anthony Trollope and speeding it up. I just something's going on there that I don't understand. Randy Ray is here. Steve, when you get to be our age, when nature calls, we must answer. Yes, when nature calls, we must answer. But sometimes nature has stepped away from the phone. You just have to sit there. As I said, you just have to sit there. That's all. So don't go empty-handed. Or you're just going to be staring at the bluebirds for 20 minutes. Matt Sheridan is asking Jenny how her day is when he should only be asking how my day is. Hannah's book says, how's the lighting in the bathroom? Well, I'm not one of those YouTubers. There's no way I would do that. J. Scott Phillips can't just install enhanced lighting in the bathroom, problem solved. No, the bean won't go in there. So that doesn't solve my problem. Frida is the weirdest little dog when it comes to her kingdom. She, for instance, she will not go in the bathroom for any reason whatsoever. She's never set foot in that room. She will not go into the little book room unless I carry her. She loves it in there, but she won't cross the doorstep unless I carry her. She doesn't need to be carried into any other room, but that she needs. She won't go out into the kitchen unless it's to kill a mouse. If she sees a mouse cross the bare floor of the kitchen, she's out there in a fraction of a second before I can even see her move. But otherwise, no. She goes to the door of the kitchen. You can call her out there. I can induce her to go out there. She'll only go out in the kitchen when it's time for a walk. And then only skirting the side of the wall, she goes straight to the door. She won't wander around out there. She's never been into the pantry. It's the weirdest thing. And she absolutely well, this part I'm grateful for. She absolutely won't under any circumstances leave the apartment. She won't leave through either the front or the back door on her own. It could be wide open all day, and she wouldn't do it. So, so she wouldn't. I wouldn't work because she wouldn't be with me. Uh, let's see here. Jenny Parks is responding to Matt Sheridan. Jasper Antonelli. I was trying an audiobook of the history of Elizabeth, of the historian by Elizabeth Kostova, only to realize it was an abridged version. That'd be a long audiobook. I can't imagine it. I just can't imagine it. What's the matter, babe? They're all talking about you. They are. Want to come down here? Huh? There you go. Oh, there's the baby. Hang on just a second while we get the bean all nice and comfortable. There you go, baby. Oh, oh, there you go. There's my. Oh, let's see here. Hannah's back. I mean, if you're. Oh wait. Oh no, the chat jumped at the mere mention of her name. Goodness gracious. Let's go back. At least I know who I'm looking for. Um, oh my God. Let's go back. Uh, I mean, if you're already not wearing pants, what difference would it make? It would make a difference. The acoustics would reveal right away where I was and what I was doing. I'm insult. I insult my listeners plenty without doing that. Matt Shannon's responding to Jenny Sparks. Jenny Parks says, "Please be dude, bro." uh, uh, Jenny Park says, "I found that the little things, when they accumulate, are far more annoying than big things." Yeah, yeah. The big things require you to stop, sit back on your haunches, and address things. And the whole world's on your side. The little things, the whole world's laughing at you, and they're all coming from different sides. So you can't sit back, square on your haunches, and marshal your resources. Instead, you've got to respond piecemeal in a million different directions. And that is starting to. I'm hoping that this Stevestream will stop that momentum. I don't want that to happen. Uh, let's see here. Balin321 says, "Why do other booktubers hate you? What did they do wrong?" It's a cumulative thing. It's just a game of Chinese rumors. It started at the beginning of my channel when there was a tempest in a teapot and a hashtag to eradicate me from the face of the earth. It was a total over exaggeration. It was a total overreaction, even though I was in the wrong. Perfectly happy to admit that. And it faded. It went away. I didn't go anywhere, but it left a, just a characterization in the back of the minds of people who've never watched this channel and never will. That, oh, that guy. Oh, I know who he is. I know everything there is to know about him. I know that he's horrible. I know that he's cancelable. I know that he's, say it with me now, literally worse than Hitler. I don't know why. I've never looked into it. The cool kids, the mean girls whose favor I want, have told me that's the case, and I just believe it. I'm not going to watch any of his videos because there's a chance I might like him, and that would eradicate the popularity of my channel. So, and that's been years. The people nowadays who instinctively react against me don't even know the origin of why that is. But it doesn't matter to me because I found a ton of people who don't feel that way. Uh, Gina Stand Your Books is here. Hi, Steve. I went through an Iris Murdoch phase in the 90s, but haven't read her much recently. I started Nuns and Soldiers last night after I heard you talk about it. Well, I never went through a phase. I read her with every book that was coming out. And of course, I was horrified that if you live by your pen, if you live out in the world of books and expression and getting out there in the communal conversations, your number one terror is that you will lose your mind. So that was just horrifying to have happen. To know was happening. That was just horrifying to know that was the reason. Uh, but I was never in a phase. I never really liked any of the books. The only one I remember as it was coming out, the only one I remember kind of sort of liking in a very tepid kind of way was A Fairly Honorable Defeat. But that has bugged me. I've always thought maybe these things were coming out at the wrong time for me. I've never felt that way about Doris Lessing, but believe it or not, I have often felt that way about Margaret Drabble. So a lot of these things might be if I return in 2024 and I care about books and I'm on BookTube, or even if I'm not, that 2024 might be a time for rereading women, for rereading 20th century women. There are a whole bunch that I could do. Barbara Pym, I already know that I like. Muriel Spark, I already know that I love. But there's Penelope Lively. There's Anita Brookner. There's Doris Lessing. There's Margaret Drabble. There's Iris Murdoch. There's a lot that I could do. The 20th century female scholars, I know I love already. There's a long list of them. But the fiction, but anyway, Stephen Bronstein, I got hired at Radio Shack because my mom had a friend whose son worked there, and she said I would get a job. She said I should get a job. So I did as she said, like a sheep. I think they hired whoever was willing. You can't sell the material. Why would they hire someone who couldn't talk about their own wares? That doesn't make any sense. But again, bookstores. So I know that it happens. Auntie Gaia says, speaking of Brattle, have you ever hosted author events there? There are no author events there. But I wouldn't host. They'd get somebody to do it. They wouldn't. They wouldn't want me to do it. I would love to host. I would love to. There's a thing I would love to do at the Brattle. There's no way that I could. I would love to do a live book by book live stream from the sale cards with you, just to you. So I turn the camera instead of the camera on me. I turn the camera on the books, and you all you see is my hand reaching out to touch each one of them as we talk about them all. But there's no way that I could do that. There will always be customers in the lot, and that would be rude to them. Uh, Balin321 says your background recognizes Dutch excellence. In a way, it does. Hannah's books. I can promise it because I know the scratch the surface commentator. Oh, this is why I am well behind on the comments. You cannot promise it. You are not a telepath. But if you know the scratch the surface commentator, then and you're saying that his meaning was the exact opposite of what the words of his actual comment were, then please pass along my condolences for having such a bad case of Tourette's. Otherwise, I'm assuming command of English. I can read a comment. I don't need any gloss on a comment that says you barely scratched the surface. Maybe he was just using a phrase. Maybe maybe you're right, and what he meant was I would have liked a lot more than this. That would certainly be nice. I did not leave a response specifically because you can't tell tone in emails. Connor, I can tell you why these last few streams have been great. It may be because a certain someone has been in all of them. Oh, really? I'm assuming you mean me. I'm assuming erroneously that you mean me. I don't know what it is, but it's definite. And I don't know what I'm going to do uh, continuation wise. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't think, unless I change locations, and that's not the end of the world. I could change locations. I could do a Stevestream from somewhere else, from a different part of Hyde Cottage. This location will not work, for instance, tomorrow at all. I don't think it will work for the next 2 weeks. So maybe I should look into that. Maybe I should look into changing locations, maybe in the little book room. That might work. Uh, Jordan Parsons is here. Good Lord, everybody, you could feel free to get on Jordan Parsons about reviving his BookTube channel. Everyone wants you back. It's not just me. Everyone does. But thank God for Orlando and for Wolf. I agree completely. Gandhi Angle says, did you watch coverage of Rosalind Carter's funeral? No, I tend not to watch live news coverage of funerals. I don't know why that is. I don't know why they're. Well, I guess it's communal mourning. I didn't. No, no, I didn't. And I've only barely been keeping up with this scurrilous alt right commentary on social media about her. I'm just trying not to think about it. It's going to be exponentially worse when her husband dies. So I'm gearing up for it. There's no way to avoid it unless I avoid social media, which isn't all that bad an idea. So, Matt Sheridan says, speaking of Virginia Woolf, we are reading Mrs. Dalloway in class this week. Next week is The Waves. Good Lord. How wonderful. And last week was Jacob's Room. Good Lord. Kudos to your teacher. That's unusual. Geo Craftsman, I hope you have a good day, Steve. I like the video you did with Hannah, and it is certainly that neither of you merely scratched the surface. Well, I loved it too. It was one of the highlights of my day. Until now, this Stevestream is turning out to be wonderful, just like I expected. So that's great, and I can't thank, as usual, I can't thank you all enough. I also tried to perk myself up by playing around with tech, which always does perk me up. Although I have had some tech mishaps over the year of 2023 that have decreased my stockpiles. I was very happy to have an enormous amount of stockpile tech. I'm noticing as I'm going around, as I'm looking at all this stuff, plugging it all in every outlet, bringing it all to life, and looking around at it, I'm looking how many of these things are not really that functional. No fault to the sender, just not functional anymore. They might still work, but they don't get updates of any kind. They're not workable. I might need more tech. I might need that. Matt Sheridan says Gore Vidal hated Truman Capote. Matt Sheridan also says Vidal's roasting of Reagan is always hilarious viewing. Geo Craftsman says, "Is epicene the word of the day? I feel like I've heard you use it a lot recently, only when warranted." Trust me. Colombian Thunder, I've never heard of Gore Vidal before, but your video definitely grabbed my interest in checking out United States. Your appraisal of it was very contagious. Never heard of Gore Vidal? Wow. Okay. Well, you've got a lot of great reading in front of you, that's for sure. Connor says, Steve, I'm starting to understand your disdain for academia. Talk about condescension. They mustn't realize that knowledge does not equal intelligence. Well, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to go on a rant of any kind. But they they absolutely believe that knowledge equals intelligence, and that both equal wisdom, and that there's a place where those things live, and it's only one place. I have my issues with them. My issues with them blossomed to nuclear levels of antagonism when I briefly joined their ranks, and has only gotten worse since then. I absolutely hate the feeling of being contemptuously dismissed by somebody who thinks they're my better. I hate that. Absolutely hate that. I realize I'm not an autodidact, but I would stack my reading against anybody. Uh, it- Randy Ray says maybe next year I can read the complete works of Gore Vidal as one of my reading projects. You'd hit some duds, but there wouldn't be that many of them. There'd be a lot of good reading in a read along like that. Bottle Imp Books says, Steve, you completely agreed with your assessment of Gore Vidal's United States collection. Are there any other must read essay collections? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There are quite a few. Should I do a whole bunch more of them? There are quite a few. Not many of them are of the same tone as Vidal, but there are quite a few that are. And of course, a number of you knew right away who I was referring to in that video. I was, of course, referring to The Time of Our Time by Norman Mailer. His 1,000-page collection of bits and pieces of his own work that he went to his publishers and said, "Look, I want one that's like this. I want the United States. I want National Book Award." He added a lot more words to that and was drunk, of course, or drugged, or just insane with self-importance. But like I said in that video, you can't make that spark. It either happens or it doesn't. It's either the right time for it. It's not. And I never see United States by Gore Vidal for $1 out in the sale lot at the Brattle. I see Time of Our Time all the time out there. So it wouldn't be one of them. Jared Henderson is here. In college, I told my English professor that my favorite book was Calvino's Invisible Cities. He simply replied, "Don't be a show off." Okay, kind of liking this professor. Mary B says, yes, King by Egg donation, not a discard. Was a Steve themed visit also for $1 the long weekend life in the English country house and Dostoevsky's Demons. Do you like those? I like them both. Yeah, I'd love to know who the translator was for Dostoevsky's Demons. I'm assuming it's Pevyar and Volkonsky. That you did great. Just the King biography alone for $1, you did great. Randy Ray says, I've discovered the best way to interact with Chat GPT. Pretend that you're Captain Kirk trying to talk the computer into self destruct. I believe I'm getting closer. Bottle Imp Book says, I really look forward to your year end list each Christmas. Yep, they'll be starting on the 1st of December, one category a day until there are no more lists. Until there are no more lists. And we will start with the holy trio of beginning places. We will start with reprints, literature and translation, and debut fiction. And then we'll move on from there at a gallop. One list per day until they're done. uh, let's see here. Joshua Crabo says, I picked up Anne Carson's translation of Sappho yesterday. She writes so beautifully. What do you think of it? I particularly like it. I hope you do. Matt Sheridan says, I'll be waiting for your year end lists. Yes, my year end lists are something you can take to the bank. Something you can take to the bank. They are one person who has read all of these books. There's no clashing aesthetics. There's no wondering, well, does this person know what he's talking about? You either like you're on you either like some the way I recommend books and you've maybe had some good experiences with recommendations of mine, or you already know that you don't. So you can just ignore the whole thing. There won't be any bandwagon jumping either. My list will not be in any way influenced by whoever has paid $50 for a full page color ad in another section of the paper. uh, Kevin J.N. says, I found the blue whale hanging from the Museum of Natural History in New York City. Awe-inspiring. I wonder if the statue of Theodore Roosevelt was moved as threatened. I haven't looked into it. I don't know if his statue has been moved or not. Balin 321, at my uni's history department, 20 pages a week is considerable a lot for undergrad. 20 pages a week. Yeesh. Okay. Alex Blair says, I have coworkers who listen to audiobooks while working, and I have no idea how they do it. I struggle to focus on audiobooks when I'm doing nothing else. Yeah, that's what makes me wonder how much of it is actually adhering. I know that audiobook fans will say, that's just snobbery, but I don't. Maybe it's I've never really given it a concerted try, so I don't know. But I've heard from I know almost nobody who listens to audiobooks to the exclusion of doing anything else. I know almost nobody who does that. They are explicitly brought up again and again and again as something that you do while you're doing something else, which is not something reading can do. You can't read while you're doing something else. I think that says a lot about the difference. Uh, let's see here. Siva Bronstein says, Gore Vidal, what about him? The chat has jumped. Jeez, you people are so used to this by now, but I'm not. Let's go and find you. Let's go and find you. I wish this didn't do this. Gore Vidal was a big fan of Montaigne. Are you more of a fan of Vidal than you are of Montaigne? Yes, I am. I would never have said that while he was alive, and it might get to him, but I am more of a fan of him than I am of Montaigne. Montaigne too often seems to me to be philosophical. In other words, he will bring up a subject that is self-evident to a 5-year-old and try to make it profound. Vidal never does that. Never. So I never feel like I'm trapped in somebody's arid Jordan Peterson intellectual exercise. Chen says, would audiobook be a good format for rereading a book? Might offer a new perspective. Well, with rereading a book, I could maybe see that. Yeah. And the few audiobooks that I have tried have been books that I know well, so that I'm not worried about it. But maybe by that same token, I am missing out on the experience of experiencing a new book through audio instead of reading. I don't know. The only times I've ever done it have been books that I know well. Uh, let's see here. Street Medic says, "Who needs pants?" Unfortunately, to do errands, you need pants. I've been told this many times, so I'm going to have them tomorrow. Steve Bronstein says, "Do you have a favorite dude bro author?" No, no, I don't. Orthia NZ says, "My Kobo is immersive enough for me. Every time I've tried an audiobook, it just ruined the experience for me. It's been my experience too. It largely ruins things. Although I have I have put my Kobos aside. I don't know if maybe your comment would be enough to nudge me to bring them out. I have two of them, and one of them is just the mid lane, sort of their equivalent of the old Oasis, is quite nice. It's quite enjoyable to use. It really is a good form factor. Uh, Michael Lombardo is here. A new segment for the channel, Donahue's Toilet Talk. This book was a turd flush. Matt Sheridan says, any visual daggers from the bean tonight? No, she's right here. She was on her couch, but it gets chilly up there. So she's hopped down to sit next to me. Not yet. We haven't had any daggers yet. They were happening by now last night. Balin321 says, Gore Vidal being called queer by Buckley doesn't feel so bad compared to some modern commentators. Was it really such a shock back then? I get a little bit sick of it totemically being mentioned whenever either one of these people comes up. No matter what kind of a party or a literary gathering you're at, if you mention something that Buckley wrote, especially, but also something that Vidal wrote, within a minute, someone is going to mention that exchange as if you've never heard about it before. And I admit that's a little weird. That gets a little tiring. Uh, Anybody can have a bad moment. Vidal had plenty of them. And it wasn't. Vidal had heard a lot worse about himself. He'd heard a lot worse about himself that day. So no, it wasn't. The only thing shocking about it was not so much the word as the crack in Buckley's veneer. That's all. Uh, Street Medic, speaking of toilet talk, we weren't speaking of toilet talk, and we aren't going to either. What's a good book for when you have to go? I take whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm currently working on. The one thing I don't do is bring electronics into the only room in the house with standing water. That's the one thing I don't do, and that I don't understand. I do not understand why people bring their phones into the bathroom. Just seems insane to me. Even if it's waterproof. Well, there's water and then there's water. James Rucala says, "Hi Steve, do you like any of the 33 and a third series of books on classic rock albums?" Not particularly. No. Francisco says, "Hi Steve, I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed your two videos, the books never written tag. I hope you do many, many of these videos." I was going to do one today. I ran out of time. Unless this counts. I say that I ran out of time because I ran out of natural day. I ran out of daylight. But this isn't bad for a video. So maybe this counts. So maybe I didn't run out of time. I could have done it. I could easily do 10 more. So I'll try to get that in tomorrow. But tomorrow is at the mercy of what the day will be like. I don't know what the day will be like. Tomorrow is going to be unusual. It is going to include unusual things that could be rotten. Uh, uh, Jenny Parks is responding to Street Medic. Francisco says, "The book I would like to read is about one hit wonders in the literary world. I don't know if a book like this exists. I've never read it. It's a good one. It would work. I've read chapters like that, but not a whole book. Especially not if it had chapters about the publishing world rather than just profiles of individual books." Street Medic is responding to Jenny Park. Jenny Parks is responding back. James Rucala, queer was definitely offensive in the 1980s and 1990s. Yes, uh, right. Balin 321, if you were 18 today, would you go to university or would you skip? It would depend. I know that's not a satisfying answer, but it would depend. If I had a line towards work, if I was getting freelance work and had a line to maybe a position at a paper or something like that, a paper or a publishing house that didn't care, I'd probably skip it, especially if I was going to incur debt. Oh my God, mind staggering amounts of debt. When I went to school, a semester at college cost $250. So, so the kind of numbers that you're talking about now, debt that literally follows people to the grave. No, I wouldn't do that. That's insane. Why would anybody do that? Jared Henderson is here. Steve talking about knowledge and wisdom. How wonderfully philosophical. James Rucala, I still find it jarring to hear on the PBS NewsHour, for example. I don't know what you're referring to there. Jack says, not the dreaded "have you read" question, but do you know of a good translation of Faust? The Penguin translation will work just fine. Or the Norton Critical Editions does a version of Faust Part 1 that'll work just fine and has tons of essays and notes and whatnot. Uh, Anti Gaia says that was below the belt to call him queer, but to be fair, Vidal could be very snarky and insulting. He certainly wasn't a nice guy, as great a writer as he was, and yet here we are talking about that anecdote endlessly. Matt Jordan says, like Gore Vidal, alcohol also destroyed Hitchens and his writing. Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think it's less visible with the writing because Hitchens was a lot more amenable to editors doing post op, and Vidal was not. Even if unless he didn't notice it, especially at the end of his career. At the very end of his career, you could rewrite an entire piece of his, and you could be almost certain that he wouldn't notice, that he wouldn't look at it, and that he maybe wouldn't remember even filing it. But Hitchens was more amenable to that. I As Hitchens himself alcohol makes an excellent servant, but a terrible master. Matt Sheridan says, like Gore Vidal. Oh, you said that all right. Krista A says, after watching your video with Micah, now my Kindle won't charge. Have you been dabbling in hexes? I am taking the advice of somebody who watched that video. I mentioned that my Kindle Oasis will not charge above 95%. And somebody mentioned, in fact, a couple of people emailed me and said that they had that same problem and solved it by letting their Kindle Oasis charge basically down to zero. Then you charge it from scratch, and it does go back up to 100. I'm willing to give that a try. I've got plenty of other e-readers. Drew's Models. I know that name. Hello, Steve. You recommended Frank McGlynn's biography of Napoleon in our conversation on Twix. Strangely, this book is not available as an ebook. Yes, it is. Should I bite the bullet and get Robert's book? Well, Robert's book is very entertaining, but feel free to email me. McGlynn's book is available as an ebook. There is an ebook of it. So if you're dead set on that one, then get in touch with me. D Temple 54 says, always thought Vidal's Lincoln came from a careful reading of Margaret Leach's Reveille in Washington. Well, Vidal certainly gave that book a careful reading. He, like a lot of gay men at his time, he tended towards misogyny that he fought against. To give him credit, for decades he fought against it, but he tended towards it at all times. And he recognized Margaret Leach's amazing ability with the written word. He recognized that. And for some stupid reason, it might have made him insecure. I don't know. Cosmic Gaze 1984. Hello, I am a new viewer to your channel. Well, welcome. How are you? Let's see here. Jenny Parks is saying welcome. Jordan Parsons says welcome to the jungle. Matt Sheridan says welcome, new Donahue disciple. Rhonda Cooper, yes, Jared Henderson, as a fellow philosopher, I think he's being philosophical. I wasn't. You would be able to know if I was being philosophical because I would stop making any kind of sense. Street Medic says, I'm going to hold Steve hostage and make him read my book and give it 5 stars, then sign autographs in his living room. Jenny Park says, just lure Steve with Oreos. Because I got mega stuff Oreos. That was very nice. Colombian Thunder, I'm Gen Z and didn't pick up reading until late high school and never much paid attention in school. So there's a lot of people I haven't heard of yet. Gore Vidal is a name that never came up anywhere. Amazing. Amazing. Well, that means he's doomed. That means in 20 years, no one will read it. Wow, that's a little sobering. That's one I wish didn't fade. Matt Sheridan, thoughts on master, slave, husband, wife? Can you guess? Take a wild guess. I bet your guess is true. Colombian Thunder, before now. Okay, you're finishing your comment. Okay. Street Medic says, Jenny Parks is responding to Jenny Parks. Jenny Parks is responding to the Spaminator taught me well. Gandhi Angle says, it seems people either love or loathe Ridley Scott's movie on Napoleon. I don't know of anybody who loves it, unless you're interpreting the box office success as loving. But the box office success could easily be that there's nothing else. If you're looking for something big and meaty, and maybe you've got your dad along or an uncle along, there's nothing else to take them to. If Ridley Scott's Napoleon movie were appearing in theaters alongside, I don't know, a Tom Hardy reboot of Die Hard, I bet it would have tanked the box office. I don't know of anybody who's a big fan of it who's saying that. I think the numbers are the only thing that show that. Cosmic Gaze 1984 says, I've been wanting to get into reading Erasmus. What book by him would you recommend as a starting point? Well, of course, I'd recommend The Praise of Folly. Just find a popular edition, read about it ahead of time on Wikipedia or somewhere else. Read the introduction to it. The Penguin version is just fine. Then read the book, read the notes, all that sort of thing. Unfortunately, Erasmus is not an author who just sort of stands on his own. You kind of do need to ensconce him in his time and his issues. Christina says, I came across an immaculate copy of Empire by Gore Vidal in a little free library today. Sounds like I need to pick it up next time I walk by. Will it still be there? My little free libraries get pillaged, absolutely pillaged. And I feel terrible if I take anything from them anyway. but there's one. The one that is most convenient for me is it's right there on the sidewalk, but back along the side of the house that it's in front of is a back porch with the house's dogs on it. In any kind of temperate weather, those dogs are out there. And they set up a hullabaloo. Just an incredible hullabaloo. They're not aggressively, just they make a huge baying, chaotic noise. And Frida doesn't like that. You're not allowed to make noise unless she gives you permission, so she responds. So it's just I wouldn't take anything from that little free library anyway, but it's such a crisis moment to be there. The Street Medic says, okay, if you were snowed in and out of toilet paper, which book would you sacrifice first? Now, questions like that don't work. Why don't you just ask me, what do you think of Tolstoy? Jenny Park says, I take my Kindle to the bath. Am I a bad reader? Probably have a new Kindle, kind that's largely waterproof. The newest Kindle that I have, the Kindle Basic, I think, or maybe, well, certainly the Kindle Paperwhite. If I had a real bathtub, something that wasn't 4 inches deep, and I were wallowing in the bathtub and it dropped in the water, it would not break. I could it could drop into the bottom of the tub and stay there for the rest of my bath, and still wouldn't be, still you'd just be able to shake it out. The Kindle and a lot of other e-readers put a lot of stock by that fact because they know that a lot of people like to read by the pool or at the beach or in the tub. But I don't have a real tub, so Jared Henderson is here. A few years ago, I discovered the Firing Line archives on YouTube. I love watching Buckley's old interviews, even if I don't like Buckley himself. It's pretty easy to tell from a lot of those interviews that he was not particularly likable. I know that was the shtick, uh, anyway, but even under the shtick, it's pretty easy to see. But they are wonderful. Uh, uh, MTNGRL 585. It was a bad moment between Vidal and Buckley. Vidal had called Buckley a crypto Nazi, and then Buckley made his unfortunate comment. Yes, and we're still talking about it. It was 170 years ago. The next guest on that same show was Jeb Stewart. It was 170 years ago. And when either Vidal or especially Buckley's name comes up in any context at all, that show will come up within 1 minute. It ought to be just forgotten. It ought to be just completely forgotten, but we're still talking about it. Michael Lombardo, a good book for the bathroom, What to Expect When You're Expecting. Jasper Antonelli, I go to community college because it's cheap and I'm doing STEM. If I wasn't living on campus, it'd be completely free from scholarships and financial aid. I would agree. If you're dead set on going, then go for the cheapest option. It's all about what you make it. The kind of places that are going to dismiss you from consideration for a position solely because your resume doesn't say Princeton or Harvard are not the places that you would want to work. Trust me, they are not. What are you doing? How's the little bean? Hmm? Uh, Balin 321 wants to know what school was that, but it's entirely possible that Jasper will not want to say that. That's not really an internet question. Ortho NZ says I would skip uni for sure. Street Medic says I went to. Oh, Street Medic said something. Oh God, he said something. Let's go back and find him. The chat jumped again. I went to college on an ROTC scholarship, but believe me, I paid for it later. Max says just started reading Galatea 2.2, and it's really good. Found it from your best of list. It is really good. I'm glad you like it. That author has a lot of really good books. Uh, Orthia NZ says, or at least not go straight from school. Life experience is worth so much more. Yeah, I always wish that the UK gap year were more common in America. It's a good practice. I wish it isn't common here at all, but I wish it were. Balin321 says, do you recommend Michael Broer's Napoleon trilogy? Not particularly, no. You can easily find my reviews of one or maybe two or maybe three. Well, I don't know that I reviewed all three, but I know I reviewed at least one or two of them. Rich Brothers read African Made, Nick Taylor, on your recommendation. Thank you. Shows what we can do in our country. American Made. Yeah, American Made is an excellent book. You would never think it, but it is. Matt Sheridan, Joaquin looked drunk from the scenes I've seen. Joaquin was amazing in Gladiator because he was so cartoonishly over the top. There's plenty of cartoonish over the topness in the Ridley Scott movie. Plenty of it. Hannah's Books says, I enjoyed Master Slave Husband Wife very much, especially the first half. Such a fascinating story. Yes. Mac says, what do you think of Oppenheimer as a person? Why do I care? Why would I care what Oppenheimer was like as a person? Do I care if he patted his dogs while he was inventing the greatest weapon of mass murder in the history of the species? Uh, well, he knew what he was doing. Well, he knew what he was inventing and didn't back away from it, didn't resign, didn't sabotage it for Pete's sake. He was in a perfect position to do so. He and Enrico Fermi were both in a position to set back this device for decades. They didn't do it. Even once they knew how it was going to be used, they didn't do it. So what do I care if he fed his canaries on time? Connor says, regarding the comment about not knowing Vidal, I'd bet that if you only heard about writers from American schools, you'll know Shakespeare, Hawthorne, and maybe Orwell. That's it, unfortunately. In American schools, maybe American schools of a certain day, not now. Balin321 says the movie was bad even if you ignore the history. At least Kingdom of Heaven director's cut worked as a movie. There are parts, I don't know that Kingdom of Heaven works from beginning to end. Even I wouldn't know about the director's cut, but the movie that he authorized to be in movie theaters, I don't know that it works very well as a movie, but it has some amazing bits in it. including long bits. So it definitely works in that way. Uh, Street Medic says, I'm going to wait until I can watch Napoleon when it comes out on TV so I can turn it off if it's stupid without wasting my money. Well, it would be a huge waste of money now. It would be what's the movie ticket? $10? More than that? Plus, the concession stand if you do that, and plus endless ads, and then previews, and then more endless ads, and then members of the audience taking phone calls and talking without even caring that they're ruining the movie for everyone else. No, no, I would never do it. Probably your strategy is best. Aiden says, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been a whole week in which I've only read comic books." Well, I comic books are a lot of fun. Michael K. Vaughan has picked a great subject for tomorrow, which is terrific for tomorrow's Epic Comic Book Wednesday. I only hope I'm in the mood to do it. I'm only hoping that tomorrow is gentle on me. I don't know if it's going to be. I'm hoping that it is. Uh, Gandhi Engel says, as a teenager, I came across Buckley. I found his voice enthralling. He was so absolute in his opinions. Yeah, at least that was the shtick. Matt Sheridan, I'm going to check out Adam Zamoyski's book on Napoleon. It's good. I think you'll like it. He wrote two, and they're both good. Matt Sheridan, Gore and Buckley despised one another for the rest of their lives. So we're back to that, Matt. We're back to that anecdote. Can't get away from that moment. Not ever. Stephen Bronstein, I started. What? Where you started watching what? I saw you, and then the chat jumped. I started watching The Gilded Age, which was written by Julian Fellows, the Downton Abbey guy. Have you watched it? I have not. I've not. Was it any good? Uh, Street Medic says, and when I say, was it any good? What I want you to do, if you choose to respond in your comment an hour from now, is not to write the simple word yes, because I won't have any idea what you're talking about. Instead, remind me of what you're talking about and say, was it good or was it not? Street Medic, I like Buckley's interview with Mortimer Adler, but you could barely see them through the pipe smoke. Baylor 321, I was asking you what school you went to, Steve. Oh, you're asking me. It's still not an internet question. Uh, CM Lady says the last time I saw Gore Vidal book on a uni syllabus was City and the Pillar on a gay and lesbian lit course. A professor in his 70s said Vidal's time has passed. Wow. Oh my. Wow. I was just thinking that today. I reread this thing. Robert Reinhardt's book, History of Shadows, uh, which is an older gay novel that I don't know where to put it. I don't know what to do with it now. It's almost like, despite its plot, despite the actual plot of the novel, it's almost like it was also a chapter in a larger plot that had not yet been resolved and now has. So that I really don't know I don't know what to make of it. The first time I read it, I thought it was revelatory. I thought there were parts of it that were incredibly good. Now it all feels incredibly dated, like its time has passed. I don't know. I need to explore that. There's no time. I'm out of time to explore it. Gandhi Angle says Christopher Buckley said his father regretted that moment and losing his composure for the rest of his life, and we are still talking about it. Mac is responding to Jasper Antonelli. Boleskin Books. Who is that? Boleskin Books. Ridley Scott owes me 3 hours of my rapidly diminishing time. I did warn you. I did warn you. I know it's movies and not books, but I am a professional critic. I have been a professional critic for a long, long time. And it's a thing. And I was offering a critical opinion of it based on my knowledge, not of it, but of you. I did warn you. You least of all. Good Lord. Is there anybody connected with Brook Duke who knows more about Napoleon's battles, to say the least, than you do? Just to watch a recreation of the Battle of Waterloo, in which the French and English are firing directly at each other, directly at themselves, with the wrong weapons, in the wrong formations, at the wrong time, with everything wrong about it. Anyway, yes, he does. It's a shame. I don't know anyone who's watched that movie and liked it. Geo Craftsman says, my friend who's in college and is broke says he wishes more than anything that he took a gap year like I did. Can be very good. I mean, the gear up to finishing high school, all the pressure's on. Pick a school. We'll help you with their essays. You've got a placement course. You've got a guidance counselor. All the pressure is on to get you right off to the next level. And momentum is never good with a major life decision. Going to college is a major life decision. You should take your time to think about it. James Rucala says, "Are there any good adaptations of Vanity Fair?" I've never seen one. There might be some sort of mini-series thing that I've never watched. Could very well be. Balin 321, Joaquin Phoenix is too old to play Napoleon at Toulon. Yes, he looks every one of his 200 years or whatever. Yeah, he's miscast as Napoleon, badly miscast. I could think of people to cast as Napoleon. The key to casting Napoleon is to go against type. He can't be rugged. He can't look grim. He can't look dude, bro. He never looked any of those things, so he can't look that way. It has to be a jarring visual perception. Of course, Ridley Scott's not going to do that because he was casting a friend. The person I don't remember his name. A lot of you know his name. He's most famous in memeology for being the guy in the Nazi suit that says, "Are we the baddies?" But he's a famous comedic actor. I'm not remembering his name, but he would have been perfect as Napoleon. He couldn't have saved this movie, but he'd be perfect casting. Colombian Thunder, not to be solipsistic, oh god, but I would be hard pressed to find anyone my age to have also heard of Vidal, though maybe it's just me. Maybe I'll experience Bader Meinhof after this. No, I don't know exactly what your generation is, but I'd be willing to bet that under the age of 25, people don't know him. He's not an active presence in bookstores. So it's entirely possible that he's just going to be gone. That's a little painful. I guess that's what I'll take. I'll take that if his contemporaries can also be gone. I'll take the good with the bad. It's just that one stings a bit. Uh, Jasper Antonelli is responding to Mac. Michael Lombardo says, "Do you feel any best of roundup in December? Do you feature any best of roundup in December smoke signals?" Nope. Nope. Well, uh, Liam of Liam's Lyceum fame of BookTube did a sort of a retrospective on fantasy for the year. I don't know if that's the best of. It's certainly not, a list or anything like that. But that's as close as we come. Otherwise, no. Matt Sheridan, Nolan seems to admire Oppenheimer. That's weird. Yeah, maybe not so weird. I think like attracts like. Uh, but where did you go? Oh, here we go. Gandhi Engel says enjoyed Robert's books on Churchill and Napoleon, but could not get into his book on King George. I if I were the paranoid type, I would assume that the book on King George was written specifically to annoy me. That's what I would guess. After my extensive animadversions on the Napoleon book, I would think that it's not a coincidence that the next book is on the guy who quartered troops on Boston Common. But I'm probably wrong about that. Andy Gaia says maybe Vidal's other novels will be doomed, but I refuse to believe Burr is doomed. I think it will be in print, maybe even reprinted for a while. I don't know. Who was it that did that lovely paperback reprint here in the United States about 20 years ago, 25 years ago? All of this stuff came out in those uniform trade paperbacks. Quite good binding, nice and flexible. Are we going to see another full sweep reprint like that? Are we going to see that? I don't think we are. I don't think that's going to happen again. Any more with him than with Updike or Mailer? I don't think we're going to see it again. I could be wrong, but let's see here. Street Medic says, "Why doesn't the Legion of Superheroes ever get any love?" I don't know. My love apparently is not sufficient. Street Medic here is referring to the greatest comic book creation this side of Superboy and his dog Crypto. And they are involved in the Legion of Superheroes, a team of superpowered teenagers 1,000 years in the future who band together to fight evil and help people out. So many incarnations. Legion fans are known for their fanaticism, but they've had precious little to go on. Precious little. DC hyped up a relaunch, a reboot. It's a millionth reboot of the Legion just a few years ago. And it was a train wreck of identity politics and political correctness. It was a train wreck of SJW writing. Just almost a parody of SJW writing. So it wasn't much to do with it. And it of course got canceled because comic book fans aren't interested in agenda driven politics in their comics. So they didn't buy it. They gave it a few issues, they realized what it was, and they stopped buying it. That happens every time. DC and Marvel, every single time they do that, that's what happens. And they don't care. They just don't care. In fact, they view every time a book like that folds as a mark of honor. It's a fatally sick industry. It deserves to die. If any new industry were to take its place and care about what the fans think, I would love a relaunch of the Legion of Superheroes. That would be great. Without all the race and gender swapping, without all the my two mommies or my two daddies nonsense. But just obviously, Legion fans care about Legion lore. Obviously, they care more about that than any fan of any other franchise does. They don't want. They're okay with minor tweaks here and there. They don't want wholesale changes of the lore that are only designed to tell them that they are bad people. So I don't know why they don't get any love. They have lots of love from me. Uh, Michael Lombardo says just picked up Avengers epic late 1980s Tom Palmer art. Okay, uh, Tom Palmer alone, so not Tom Palmer inking somebody. So this is the run where Reed Richards and Sue Richards join the Avengers. Is that what you're maybe thinking of? That run, a fairly new Avengers epic collection. Is that the run you're thinking of? The Bookish Bryants are here. I am really late. Sorry, Steve. Well, don't let it happen again. Matt Sheridan says, "Do you think Chomsky will be remembered after his death?" For a little while, yeah, but not for long. If Vidal can go, if Buckley can go, then Chomsky can certainly go. Hannah's Books is here back again. I read Vidal's Burr more than 30 years ago and still have fond memories of some of his stories of Burr's daughter, Theodosia. Burr is one of his most successful books, I think. I just the other day saw a mass market paperback at the Brattle, and I just left it there because I have it as an ebook. I don't often have a yen to reread it. I don't need another mass market. It's so tempting to think mass markets are nothing, but you pile up enough nothings and suddenly you can't turn around. So I just left it there for somebody else to get. Kevin J.N. says, I remember Buckley's signature red pen. Always felt his confrontation with Chomsky was more memorable. P.S. How come Chomsky is still the dude bro of dude bros with the far left? Well, how many other people have they got? Right? Who else have they got that's even remotely domesticated? Michael Lombardo, I think Napoleon was better portrayed in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. The portrayal I had in mind was Ian Holmes' great portrayal in Time Bandits. But yeah, either one would be better than this piece of crap. Aiden says, I'm once again obsessing over illustrated versions of books. I'm currently hunting for all the Bronte books and other Victorian classics. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite illustrated book? An illustrated Bronte book? No, I don't think so. I, I liked the Reader's Digest illustrations when I had those editions, but I didn't keep them. I obviously didn't like them enough to keep them. Joaquin is a roasting tobacco addict in the Joker film. His character needs to smoke in scenes because Joaquin is hooked. Smoking aged him lots. Something aged him. He doesn't look. I joke about him being 200 years old, but he doesn't look good at all. Uh, let's see here. Geo Craftsman, maybe Ian Holm and Time Bandits would have made a better Napoleon. Yeah, I just said I thought about him right away. I thought about him for Napoleon. Uh, Maximus Stedich says David Mitchell as Napoleon. Is David Mitchell the actor I'm thinking of? Are we the baddies? Is what they, but he has done a lot of other things. He's a very good comedic actor, and he would be perfect because when people looked at Napoleon, they didn't know what they were looking at. He raised all sorts of expectations, and then they lost their country. So that would be just what you'd want. Ridley Scott is not the director to see that. Mac is responding to Jasper Antonelli, and then the chat jumped. And then Aiden says, "Who are you casting as Goethe and Schiller in Napoleon's sequel, directed by Zack Snyder?" I'm not casting either one of them. They don't belong in movies. Either one of them does. Street Medic. I can't remember the last time I read Gore Vidal. Well, he's come up a lot on this chat. That's kind of comforting in a way. Uh, naturally, since I talked about United States just the other day, I ended up rereading a ton of it, just a chunk of it. Uh, Connor says, "Thank God I made it out of that last year of high school unscarred." And I'm also a Gen Z who's read Gore Vidal, although I think that's actually a bad sign for him rather than a good sign. Maximus Stennis says, I'm 21 years old. Are you really? Good Lord, how many young people are in this chat? And myself and two others, closely aged friends, have gotten around to Vidal through an appreciation for Hitchens. Yes, an appreciation for Hitchens, but maybe slightly tarnished by their massive public falling out that took place almost exclusively in public in the pages of Vanity Fair. I wrote extensive commentary on that for my old literary blog, Steve reads, I don't know if it's available online. I don't know if you can find those entries, but I never missed it. The next installment that came out, I would dissect at length, 2,000 words. Uh, there is a distinct pipeline between the two, as they would say. Oh, I agree. I agree. There is. It's a shame. There are a lot of shames involved here. It's a shame that they didn't stay on good terms. First of all, it's a shame that Hitchens wasn't really capable of sustained work. He wasn't capable of sustained scholarly work. Or if he had stayed on good terms with Gore Vidal, who knows what might have happened? That would have been wonderful. Imagine an 800-page biography authorized of Gore Vidal by Christopher Hitchens. Imagine what an incredible book that would be. Uh, anyway, James Bucala says, you were talking about the Mount brothers yesterday. Do you recommend the book William Sidney Mount and the Creolization of American Culture? I'm an admirer of Mount for his painting of musical subjects. I am not a fan of that book. No, there's no good book on the Mount brothers. Jenny Parks, I'm off to get some sleep. Wish me luck for my job interview. I'll watch the rest of it on replay. Just remember to be yourself. Balin 321, manga has taken the place of comics 100%. Manga has not yet been institutionally captured. It is largely free, almost some manga entirely free of that. That's what fans are avoiding. That's what they fled from. They went to a whole bunch of places. They made a multimillionaire uh, out of the guy who a Comicsgate guy. I'm forgetting his name at the minute now. Is it Eric July? They made a multimillionaire out of him, sight unseen, for his production. And they, because it was sight unseen, they were pledging their money. Partly, some of them were alt-rights who were pledging money to their team, but a lot of them were pledging money because I just want not to have this. I have a long list of things now that I don't want in my comics. If you promise me that that list will not be in your comic, I'll buy it. And you can make that promise about manga that you absolutely can't make about mainstream superhero comics anymore. You absolutely cannot do it. Street Medic says, bye, Jenny. Balin321 says, what 21st century non-political figure do you think will be remembered 100 years from now? Well, Greta Thunberg will still be alive 100 years from now, so that might be. And keep in mind, a lot of the ways that someone would be, unless you count her as political, a lot of the ways that people would be remembered will be bad. They will be unforeseeable accidents. So there's that too. And I shudder to think it'll be Timothy Chalamet. I don't know. I have no idea. No way to know. Max says, "What did you think of The Fall of Hyperion? I read it last year and thought it was really bad. I refuse to believe they were originally meant to be one book. It was a significant step down." Okay, well, it isn't really bad, but I have never understood the talk that the people who confidently say this was meant to be the same book, that they are part of the same creative tapestry. I've never seen that, nor have I believed it. It might end up being true, but I see what you mean. I know what you mean by that. It's not anywhere near as good, but it's not bad. That's a little harsh, don't you think? Matt Sheridan says Hassan Piker is the new dude bro of the left. Well, there are plenty. There are plenty of dude bros or would be dude bros of the left, including, ironically enough, to a third of the dude bros of the right who say they're on the left because they think their subscribers, the people who pay for their mugs, the people who pay for their subscriptions, are the dumbest sheeple in the world. They radiate contempt for the people who allow them to have armed compounds and 50 cars and a bug out room and a steel plated shelter 2 stories down into the ground. The people who finance that, who make that possible, they hate them. It's not even hatred, because hatred would imply a kind of parody. No, they have just withering contempt. I just wish I could show it to the people on either the alt right or the alt left. I wish I could show them your good regard, your intelligent approval is worth a lot more than you sell it for. None of these people deserve it. But I can't do that. Aiden says, "Oh, you're gone. Where did you go? Let's find you again. Let's find you again." Uh, the controversy about NBA player Josh Giddey is causing Twitter to dredge up Ruskin, Novalis, Byron, and plenty of Greek and Roman authors to cancel again. Yeah, I was hoping that by this point in 2023, the whole phenomenon of cancellation would have become a punchline. That it wouldn't have any teeth anymore. That when an employer, a university especially, but also a scientific lab or a publishing house or a network, when they get word that a concerted attempt by 12 psychos on Twitter is being made to cancel person X who's on their staff, they would laugh about it rather than immediately appease. I was kind of hoping that by the end of 2023, it would be a well known joke and no one would take it seriously anymore. What's going on here? But that is not true. It is still not a complete joke. Uh, Jasper Antonelli says, I'm 20. I wonder what the average age of your viewership is. Not this again, baby. Are you just not liking Steve streams? Is that it? Just not liking? Do you not like them? They love you. Uh, well, I would love it if these Steve streams. I mean, I love all of my loyal acolytes, but I would love it if I had lots of young men between the ages of 18 and 25 in these live chats because you are the ones. No offense to anybody else, but you're the ones I'd most want to be here over wine and calzones, so that we could talk and you could realize exactly what I just said. Your high regard, your considered estimation is incredibly valuable. You shouldn't be squandering it on charlatans who don't care, who hate you. You shouldn't be doing that. Would the person that you are thinking about that quasi relationship with, would that person take you seriously? You can tell in a heartbeat the ones who would and the ones who wouldn't. I would, but I'm not in that league, so I'm hoping that we're just gonna have this creeping. We'll go to 10 past the hour. We'll go to 10 past the hour. Oh, if the bean develops a problem with Steve streams, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Let's see here. Max says, I think you have lots of Zoomer subs, Steve. I'm also 21. Good Lord. How wonderful. Street Medic says, what comes after Gen Z? I can't keep up. I think it's Gen A. James Rucala says, there was a mini series of Vidal's Lincoln. Don't know if it's any good, but did you hear about what Buckley called it? You're a little bit of a troublemaker, ain't you? Uh, Mountain Girl, I'm going to call that. Definitely sad to think Vidal's time is over. When he, what's the matter, baby? Oh my God, you are developing a dislike of Steve streams. That's not going to work. I when he ran for political office in California years ago, I voted for him. I thought at the very least he would be having interesting things to say. Well, yeah. Steve Brunstein. So far, I've only seen the first episode of The Gilded Age, and it seemed like an American Downton Abbey, which is fine by me. What do you think of the historian David McCullough? Did you like 1776? It's a slight book, but I like it. He's impossible not to like on the page. I really like some of his books. 1776 is one of his slightest things, but The Greater Journey is fantastic. What a book! And on a subject that is not, Father's Day popular, like I would expect. Oh, baby, don't jump down. Don't jump down. You can't jump back up. Go up to your shelf. There you go. I constantly have to warn her about that. She's even when she was young, she wasn't really good at getting up on furniture. She's just a tiny little thing. But now it's not a question of aim or percentage. It's just she can't do it. Less and less. She can do it if she really tries. But now she's got to. I'm trying to get her to realize you've got to think seriously about when you get down off this couch, especially when I'm not around. Um, let's see here. James Ricala is responding to Steet. Generation Alpha. Okay, not Generation A, Generation Alpha. Monet Doyle says, I found a new author I like. Well, don't be stingy. Who is this author? Aiden says, I know I usually only talk about authors that you don't love, to say the least. It's true, but you see what I'm saying, right? About this community, at least here in these Steve streams, which is that there's no animosity at all. It's true that I'm right and you're wrong, but there's no animosity at all. You're welcome to talk about authors that I don't like. So thank you for always having such a great sense of humor with me. It's my pleasure. It's my honor. Geo Craftsman says his name is Ethan Van Sciver. If we say that name 2 more times, will he appear? Oh no. Oh no. Well, the less said about Ethan Van Sciver, the better. Jasper Antonelli. Manga is sometimes unhealthily un-PC, and that's because Japan is unhealthily un-PC. Isn't it a little ironic? I agree. The parts of it that I've seen, I agree. But isn't it ironic that ordinary people, ordinary comics fans, don't have a bigoted bone in their body, are being driven into the arms of unhealthily un-PC stuff because of the extreme ideological capture of the comics they love? That is just so ironic. I agree with you, but it's so sad to me. And I don't see why it reached the point of being sad. Long before it reached the point of being sad, it should have stopped because it's unprofitable. It loses huge amounts of money. I would think that I guess I'm just such a creature of American capitalism. I just assume that is the bottom line. You might intellectually capture the creators at the front of the shop, but the money guys will not put up with this, and they do. They just universally do. Uh, Street Medic says, "Gotta go. Bad wreck requiring multiple units." Well, you are needed elsewhere then. This is just one train wreck. This Stevestream is just one train wreck. Kevin J.N. How did Hitchens evolve from his writing with the Nation magazine to cheerleader of the Gulf War? Always loved Hitchens, but he seemed always to gravitate towards self promotion. I would argue, I could be wrong, I would argue that his cheerleading for the Gulf War was, at heart, only self promotion. As horrifying as that is. I think he was thinking, everybody else hates this thing. They've hated it from the get-go. They've hated it right out of the gate. I'm going to make the case against it. I'm going to make the case in favor of it and against all of those people. It was a way to stand out, in a crowd. It was a way to promote himself and to get attention, and it worked. It really did work. Let's see here. Cosmic Gaze, 1984. Baby, what is wrong? What is wrong, baby girl? Oh, what is wrong? Come down, but not all the way down. Just stay on the couch. There you go. There you go. What is your opinion of the public domain? I feel like it has saved hundreds of books from being lost to history, but depending on the quality, they suffer from missing pages or other defects. I'm a big fan of the public domain. In fact, I'm a huge fan of it, and I think it should be a case by case basis. I know there aren't enough people to legislate it, and the law doesn't work that way. But I think that if, when you die, your works are already forgotten or not earning anything, don't have any realistic prospect of a copyright, they should go into the common domain then. None of this waiting 75 years. The number of times where somebody makes a multi-million-dollar property out of a dead uh, series of creations, well, no matter what it is, a comic or a book or whatever, somebody goes back, finds that thing, makes a multi-million-dollar property out of it, and thanks to the 75 or 100-year copyright claim, the heirs can still make it rich. The number of times that happens is 1 in a million. The law shouldn't be written for 1 in a million. It should be written for the whole. I don't like how long it takes to engage in public domain. And the missing pages or other defects is not a question of the books. That's just, we should be taking more care of all of this, whether in public domain or not. Balin321 says, what do you make of Gen Z hating phone calling? I'm right with them. I'm right with them on that. I hated phone calling even when it was the only game in town. I hate it probably for the reasons that they do. It totally commits you. You can do a little bit of the other stuff that you want to be doing, but you can't do most of it. It totally commits you. Unless you want to be rude. And despite what popular imagination says, Gen Z does not want to be rude to anybody. A lot of them, especially the men between the ages of 18 and 25, are completely socially clueless. They end up being rude. But that's largely not their own fault. It's that they've had no instruction from older men who are not related to them, which is the only place it's going to come from. The instructions from older men who are related to them is almost always going to be poison. They're not going to listen, and it's not going to be offered in good faith. It's going to have to come from a man who is older than they are and not a fool. And I guess those are in very short supply because they're not getting them. So they end up being inadvertently rude, but most Gen Z does not want to be rude. And so they hate phone calling because you almost need to be in order to escape it. It's awful. Phone calling is awful. I used to do a ton of it, and I hated it the whole time, except when I was the one being boring. No, better by far that we have decoupled the call from the response. That is better by far. That's better for everybody. You give me your message. You send me an email. You leave me a Voxer message. You give me your message, and I will respond the way I want to, when I want to, instead of you trapping me on one half of an exchange, and I can't do anything until you've decided it's over. Oh, God. Don't begrudge Gen Z for hating phone calls. They're right to hate phone calls. Mac, I thought the plot twist at the end involving the scholar's daughter in the fall of Hyperion ruined the book. Before that, it was average, in my opinion. Average? Oh, that I'm not seeing. Oh, I wish I could snap my fingers and just have you here to talk that out over wine and calzones, although not tonight. Uh, let's see here. Eric Zelinsky. Hi, Steve. Sorry I'm late to the stream, but there is a recent book that you have read that brought you tremendous happiness. Or is there a recent book that you've read that brought you tremendous happiness and joy? A wide open question, but just wanted to throw out one out there. I read some books in 2023 that I liked. That would be recent. That brought me happiness or joy, depending on what you mean. I recently reread, for instance, an Iris Murdoch. I read Nuns and Soldiers, and the reread was everything I like rereads to be. It was a completely new experience, so that was terrific. Uh, Gandhi Angle says spaghetti sauce was surely thrown today at Mar-a-Lago after Coke Network endorsed Nikki Haley. I don't know about that. I don't know that there was any temper tantrum. There would only be a temper tantrum if the Coke endorsement of Nikki Haley hurt Trump's chances in the election. Trump is not running in the election. He does not believe in elections. He thinks they're all fraudulent, all of them, all the time. he thinks they're all fraudulent. He's not running to be president, and Nikki Haley is. So I don't think that he would care. Geo Craftsman says, I am 22. Good Lord, how many of you are in your 20s? Baylor 321, what happens to young men after 25, Steve? I'm scared. Yes, it's Logan's Run. No, nothing horrible. No Soylent Green happens to them after 25. It's just after 25, when it comes to me, two things happen. After 25, they're either on their own and they don't have any interest anymore in whatever kind of relationship they might have with me, or ideally, they've become my friends. So the slight mentor mentee aspect of the earlier relationship just sort of morphs into just a friendship, which I like to think I help along because even during the mentor mentee part of that relationship over the decades that I have done, I still maintain a steady element of absurdity, of mockery, of welcoming people to mock me so that in order, because ultimately that's what I want. I want, men older than 25 to be my friends. Uh, but it's nothing. You're not going to be rendered. That's all. Jasper Antonelli says after Gen Z is Gen Alpha, and apparently they have an incredibly low literacy rate. I've heard that many kids under 10 can barely read. The statistics for America, just in general, are horrifying. A third of Americans have a sixth grade reading education. Of American adults, a third of them read at a sixth grade level or lower. And the new generation that's coming up, they're being taught by that generation. So yeah, I wouldn't doubt those percentages at all. That we are raising an entire generation of young people who almost all live online. They know TikTok and they know nothing else. And if you were to sit them down with the first chapter of The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope, they could not read it. They would know the words, but they could not read it. The function, the process of reading, just completely different. I'd like to read more about it. That'd be another book that hasn't been written yet that I'd love to read. Colombian Thunder says, have a good night, Steve. I will. We're going to 10 past the hour. Connor says, you want the young men to come to Hyde Cottage. You mustn't have met me yet. Nope, I generally do. Usually it works well. There's some give and take. There's some awkwardness involved. Some young men, I mentioned that young men between the ages of 18 and 25 can often be inadvertently rude. I don't believe that they have any blackness in their hearts at all, but they've had no male figure to teach them anything. It can't be a male relative. Your father is not there to teach you. No matter what, dude bro movies say. It can't be a male relative. It has to be an older male, but who's not parentally older and who's not a fool. He has to know more and be willing to tell you when you're wrong. Be willing to say, you pissed me off the other day, and here's why. And it's not answerable. I'm not asking you to explain yourself. There isn't an explanation. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't act that way because I'm not the only one who'll feel that way when you do. That's invaluable for a young man. And I worry that Gen Z is growing up without that almost entirely. And because of that, some of the young men that I'm talking about can be inadvertently rude. And I don't know if you've got this impression from watching my channel, but I do not suffer rudeness. I just don't. I don't suffer it. If you're completely unaware that you're being rude, you get a pass the first time. Not after that. Not after that. And every once in a while, I'll have a young man over here and that happens, but usually not. Usually not. I think it would be wonderful. Uh, Matt Sheridan says, "Got to go now. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night." Yes, we're all winding down here. We were at pretty high numbers for this stream for most of the stream, but we are wrapping up. You saw the bean is. I don't know that she's objecting this time around, but she's definitely making herself known. Uh, I don't know if that's an objection to the stream or not. Uh, Aiden says, "Your treatment and consideration of young men is the kind of grace that in my teens literally saved my life. One of many examples, but we need more. It can be life saving in metaphorical ways and literal ways. In literal ways, it can be because if a young man has actually made a series of really bad decisions, the only person who's going to be able to talk those decisions away is the kind of older man I'm talking about. A parent certainly is not going to be able to do that. You're engaging all of the reflexes in a parent that you actually want to value in them: mindless protectiveness, um, a strict adherence to rules. The things that parents do are also invaluable, but they're not going to be able to help you. They're not going to be able to help a young man with anything that would endanger his life. Not in the way that a slightly older mentor would be able to do. So I'm glad that happened. Christina says, "Steve, did you see the SNL skit?" Oh, there you're gone. The chat jumped again. I think there were enough people here to make the chat jump. About men thinking about the Roman Empire. I thought of you because I wasn't aware until you mentioned it after watching an Australian booktuber. Yes, the Grandpa's Book Club did a great send up of that. The Roman Empire, only it's queer literature. That was just awesome. I'm still chuckle when I think about that. And I don't know. This all came from a TikTok thing, and I don't know how much of it is real. A lot of the men in the clips that were in that TikTok compilation strike me as acting. So I don't know how real it is, but it was a lot of fun. You knew Saturday Night Live was going to pick up on it. You just knew they were. Blue Star Galaxy says, "I'm here. What topic are we on? Happiness or joy?" Both. We're doing both, but we're wrapping up. 10 past the hour. And Blue Star Galaxy continues. "Even though I am not religious, I'm quite fond of Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven director's cut." Well, I'm fond of a lot of parts of it too. Some of it is weirdly uneven, but maybe that is just him making the best with what he had. But I'm fond of parts of it too, not as a whole movie. Uh, Balin321 says, "What is your number one advice to these men?" Oh God, I have a lot of advice. The very first advice I would give is the least palatable, which is don't saddle yourself with permanent things. When you're 20, don't saddle yourself with permanent things. Believe me, it might seem at 20 like you've seen the whole world and it's all over. You're not going to remember anything that you did when you were 20, when you're 50. But if you saddle yourself with permanent things, well, that will change the course of your life. No drug addictions, no tattoos, no offspring. If you saddle yourself with permanent things when you're during that age bracket, you are going to regret it. There are only very rare exceptions where a guy will look back and say, "Yeah, yeah, I married my childhood sweetheart when we were both 13. We have great grandkids now, 1,000 of them, and we couldn't be happier." That's usually myth. I would say wait until you're 25 to start with the permanent things. And unfortunately, that is not the case. Society permanent things mean money, and there are a whole bunch of interested actors in society that want to start getting that money out of people as soon as possible. The urge, the factors that converge on middle school kids to start developing a drug habit, vaping, that they can't shake, that they'll never be able to shake. Those convergence of forces is enormous, and it just gets stronger in high school. So that'd be my number one piece of advice: don't do anything permanent. Uh, let's see here. Jasper Antonelli says, "Do you know of any public figures that you think are good role models for young men?" No, almost none. Almost none. In fact, just the opposite. There are a whole bunch of public figures on the alt left and the alt right who have weaponized the position of being good for young men, who are absolutely horrible for young men, absolutely horrible for them, and know it. They just want money. They just want the money of those young men. It's so horrifying. The landscape is so horrifying. I feel for these young men because everywhere around them are bad actors, people acting in bad faith, wanting their money or their social clout. Anyway, Aiden says, I can't believe that we didn't even have a live stream read aloud of William Blake's complete poetry for his birthday tonight. You'd have to talk to Wilson. You'd have to find somebody who likes Blake's poetry. I don't particularly. Stephen Bronstein says Hitchens is often talked about his hatred of Saddam Hussein, citing a video showing how he took power. Yeah, it's not a readily available video, nor are there any readily available corroborative witnesses of the severed head that he offhandedly used to mention that he saw in a street. He was in a press pool. No one else in that press pool saw a severed head. You'd think it would catch their notice. But yes, his hatred of Saddam Hussein was the way he dressed up. What I believe was just simple contrarianism. His standard phrase, his standard saying was that when somebody says, well, sure, Saddam Hussein's a bad guy, but that's the minute I know they're not serious. That's the minute I know they don't know what they're talking about. The whole time that he was saying that, every time that I heard him say that on Charlie Rose or whatever, I would say out loud to the TV, Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, but because I do know what I'm talking about. It's easy to say that. He just wanted to claim the subject, I guess. Maximus Stedich says, as a young man, I've just taken to dismiss any premise of even looking toward a public figure as a role model. I know that kind of cynicism is justified. It's so poisonous, but it's justified, and it has leached absolutely into the DNA of the young men in the bracket that I'm talking about. They don't even, like you say, they have abandoned even the premise of looking. And that has got to feel so arctically cold. That has got to be such a cold feeling. That has got to feel like society is saying, to hell with you. We don't care where you end up or what you do. And that is incredibly dangerous and wounding. And society doesn't say that to any other group. That's what bothers me about it. Let's see here. NP Hunt says, I'm 40 years old and have hated phone calls for my whole life. Everyone used to find it really odd. Now it's much more accepted. I find phone calls rude and unnecessary. Well, they're not rude, but they act like they're rude. They can be rude, sure. They are unnecessary. In almost all cases, they are unnecessary. I've almost never, I can't remember the last. Every once in a while, you have to make a phone call. You don't have to have a phone conversation ever, I think. But every once in a while, you need to make a phone call. If I need to call some place to make an appointment or ask them to do a quick thing, buy me something, wrap it up, and send it to me or something like that. But a phone conversation, oh, oh, let's see here. Connor says, I honestly didn't realize until recently that a quarter of the people my age I know spent literally 14 hours a day on TikTok. A lot of people are coming forward. A lot of people your age are coming forward and saying just that. Not just their own age, but suddenly they look around and realize to their horror that the junior high group that their siblings are in live TikTok. They know nothing else. They do nothing else. They talk nothing else, and they care about nothing else. It's totally consumed their lives. And that's the younger generation. That's the generation coming up into high school. A lot of the same people in that age bracket look around in their own age bracket and realize the capture is almost complete. They go around a dinner table if they go out to eat with friends. Everyone is on their phone, and they're all looking at the same thing. They're all looking at TikTok. Um, Blue Star Galaxy says, I'm surprised by the fact that many young people are no longer able to read analog clocks. That's largely a myth. Uh, that took on a lot of prominence. I've never seen any factual proof of it, unless maybe you know young people who can't do that. I've never met a young person who couldn't read an analog clock. Not that it matters, right? Because you're surrounded by non-analog clocks, so what difference does it make? No one tells time that way anymore, so what difference does it make? But I've never seen it proven. Maybe you have. Aiden says, I believe Gen Alpha's illiteracy can be thanked for by Rousseau. I believe that his Emile is the most read book by their parents' generation. I hope not. Balin321 says, I had no male teachers. Oh, where'd you go? The chat jumped again. I had no male teachers in high school. Now I think of it as if I had no male relations over the age of 30 until I started work. Yeah, the workplace is typically where people find these things, and that's a terrible place to find it too. There's no time for it on the clock, and if you're on the clock, the person is going to be an authority over you, which poisons the whole thing. It has to be voluntary. Whatever authority is involved in the equation that I'm talking about has to come from life experience, just as it always has. That kind of exchange, I will let you, I will let you attach to my life experience in exchange for the entree into your life to quasi give you instructions. Not they're not parental instructions, they're not workplace instructions, but I want to exchange what I'm giving you for the right to say, you shouldn't do that. Don't do that. Which without that exchange, I wouldn't have a right to do that. It's mostly workplace where young men find these things, and that's alarming in its own right. Jasper Antonelli says, when I was 11, the highlight of my year was reading Andrew Roberts' Napoleon biography, and now I know 11 years olds who can barely read. It's sad because they're going to miss out on so much. You were 11 when Andrew Roberts' Napoleon biography came out? Didn't it come out just a couple of years ago? Oh my. James Ricala, if large numbers of modern American parents are reading a meal, I'll eat every hat in town. Yes, I think it was meant as a joke. Uh, Connor says, I think I've said it before, but it's worth repeating that you have, in a way, been that older figure for me just from your videos. I've heard that from a few people. Actually, met someone at the Brattle who had been said he was watching my videos since junior high or grade school. I always forget how long I've been on BookTube, but that is kind of amazing to me. Believe you me, I take it seriously. Uh, I just wish it was possible in person. It's so much more effective in person. As for the few young men who've come over here, I'm sure they would attest to that. Cosmic Gaze 1984 says, why are, although all the people who feel that way, very few of them Voxer me, very few of them email me. Just as you can't come over here doesn't mean we can't have more contact. Uh, Cosmic Gaze 1984 says, why are there people who unironically like Finnegan's Wake? I don't believe there are. Balin321 says, Bronze Age pervert is called to mind. Costin Alamariu is very right wing, but every second lifter at the gym here in Holland know him. Costin Alamariu. Do I know who that is? Bronze Age pervert? He's a lifter. I'm assuming he's on YouTube. Do I know him? Do I know that channel? I don't know if I do or not. Tolstoy 111. Hey, I've never heard you mention The Good Soldier Strike. Do you like it? I love it. Sure I do. Jasper Antonelli is gone. He bounced. There we go. I wonder what historical figures are good role models for young men. There's no such thing as a historical figure who's a good role model. I'm not talking about a role model here. I mean, obviously you can look in history and see people behaving well. Those are examples in a way, but I'm not talking about a role model here. I'm talking about a mentor. It was a very different thing. That's a very different thing. A mentor does not have to be spit and polish perfect like a role model. A mentor just has to be able to tell it to you straight and still love you. It's not the same thing as a role model, is what I'm thinking anyway. Uh, Max says studying the gospel was what helped me come out of my shell more than anything. No kidding. Oh my, that's fascinating. Oh, see, I would wholeheartedly endorse that, except that a lot of unprepared young people in America, especially in America, is the world's most fundamentally religious country. I worry that a lot of young people might go to that as maybe a pathway to come out of their shell, but they get radicalized into the religion. And you're right next to the flame when you do that. The number of people who could use the gospel as well and come out of it as a normal person who doesn't deny science or hate gay people. I worry about that. I would worry about that as a way now. Tolstoy 111. My great grandfather couldn't read digital clocks. Great grandmother couldn't read digital clocks. Was she blind? Is that perhaps the reason? Maximus Stenish and Jasper, I'd propose Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He was such a sweet person. Yeah, he was a sweet person at another age. So, the whole point of anything to help you in the world right now, it would be lost completely. He shows personal qualities that you want to have. But I think a lot of young people know the good personal qualities. I think they do. They just might not think they're possible. Geo Craftsman, one of the girls I'm in college with says she didn't know until recently that she had to save Word documents in order for it to save. I get everything autosaves now, but it still surprised me. Yeah, yeah. A lot of people that I know, a lot of young people have grown up with that sort of thing. Yes, where everything autosaves, so I don't need to save it. Everything backs up to the cloud, so I don't need to back it up. And also on a more practical level, I don't need to worry about spelling or grammar because whatever device I'm using is going to flag any problems. So I don't need to know any of it. I'll just do whatever it tells me. And that is widespread. You can find that in the publishing world. the mainstream publishing world, where books will come right to market about a sailing ship fighting a storm on the high seas, dealing with thunder and lightning, Lightening, which just goes right past everybody else because the spell check doesn't catch it, because lightning is also a legitimate word. So spell check lets it go. So you just find it in an allegedly proofread book. Uh, Hannah's books says, with dreams of modern parents reading Emil, I must sign off. Thanks for a lovely evening to you and the rest of this lovely community. I agree. This has been great. We're going to stop in a few minutes, but this has been great. The street medic, well, that was disappointing. I don't know what you're referring to. Technical Fire, someone has been watching you since junior high. Yeah, I met him, and I'm sure he's not alone. Where it's every video, and I'm paying attention. I'm making lists. I was stunned, and the minute I started thinking about it, I realized he can't be the only one. I've been making videos a long time, and they've been very similar. There have been no radical reinventions on my channel. It's been very similar. Uh, you met him at the Brattle, yes. His father introduced me to him. They were in town to look at colleges. It would be remarkable if that person were watching the stream now, perhaps under some nonsensical pseudonym. I'm pretty sure he's not. I don't know. A lot of people that watch my channel don't watch my streams. If he is, it was wonderful meeting you. It was wonderful emailing you. We should meet. We should email more. Uh, let's see here. Jasper Antonelli says Costin Alamariu is an incredibly intelligent Harvard, Columbia, Yale person who wrote an incomprehensible anti-intellectual book. I don't get the appeal. Why do I not know this person? I'm going to have to. I don't have anything near me to take a note on it. I'm going to have to make a note of this person. Do I? No, I don't. I don't have anything. Connor says, I don't know how many people I knew from school who really took up Christianity, but put on a Christ-like attitude, and then would happily talk about how gay people will burn in hell. Right. And they would also stand by if gay people were burned in the public square, and they would burn books. I, yeah, deeply suspect the Christ-like attitude unless it's married to deeds. And it's by the deeds that you'll know them. It's the easiest thing in the world to mouth piety. Max says, do you know Scott Herman personally? I saw you comment on his video, and it was as if my worlds were colliding. Why? Why would you suspect that I do? Just because he's a young man? He's pretty old in all the important ways. He's pretty old. Tolstoy 111 says, my checker told me so. No idea what that means. Aiden says, Costin is not incredibly intelligent. LOL. His thesis is a complete joke, and he's the worst joke of all the right-wing grifters. It's that rhetoric of his intelligence that enchants young men. One of you please send me a link to this guy. I'm never going to remember, and I never look back at these streams. But I want to know who this is. I don't think I recognize the name. Maybe I'll recognize the face and the channel, but I don't know it right now. Balin321 says there were a few articles about him in the Atlantic. He's been an underground phenomenon for a while now. Oh my. Well, if I might know about him then, but I need to know more. Connor says, I've been watching your videos since 8th grade, 2018, I think. I can't believe that either. I know. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. Street Medic says, if you call half a dozen ambulances to a car wreck, make sure there actually is a car and patients that need those ambulances. Yes, I know all about that from this neighborhood. Yes, where this neighborhood overreacts like crazy. It hasn't in the last week or so. Jasper Antonelli says, I'll send you a Voxer to the Wikipedia page. Fine by me. Colin says, what are your favorite translations of the Holy Bible other than the King James? I like Bob Alter's work. I don't know that I like it as a translation. And David Bentley Hart, the parts that he's done, I like, but not many that jump out. That for the art of the translation, for the usefulness, sure. Dolsoy 111 says, did you see the new Doctor Who episode? It treats us to the Doctor being lectured on pronoun use. I did. I watched it. And I watched the tsunami of reactions to it, the popular reactions to it. And I know just what's going to happen. Sure, the tip of the spear for those popular reactions are the right-wing neck-bearded fascists on YouTube. But they aren't wrong. They might be extreme, but they're not wrong. And we are going to see one of two things. Either an independent organization is going to report that Doctor Who's ratings literally dropped like that, which happens every time this happens. It's not just the neck-bearded fascists. It's the normal people, the normal middle-aged people in the Midlands who grew up on Doctor Who. They don't want to hear it. They don't want their favorite fictional character on TV telling them they're bad people. They're not bad people. Either an independent organization is going to report that this had 1% of the viewership that it was expecting, 1%, not 10%, 1%, or the BBC is going to lie about it and later be proven to be lying about it. One of those two things is going to happen, but that is exactly what you will get from that kind of garbage. And everybody knows it. The showrunners know it for Doctor Who. They're just proud of it. They view themselves, every one of them, as Rosa Parks, as Gandhi. We need to suffer in order to fix this generation so that the future will thank us. We'll all have statues to us. Michael Lombardo says, is there a wrap-up Dr. No chat for this week? Here's hoping your Wednesday goes smoothly. Well, I don't really know what's in the works, but it will all depend on whether or not this week is turned against me. If this week is turned against me, I'm not going to do any guest stars or anything like that. I'm going to just pull in and hermitize. Jasper says, I've been watching your videos since I was 17. Good Lord. Good Lord. Well, I'm very grateful. At least I know I'm not doing you any harm. But I'm very grateful. I'm very honored by that. Balin321, his pro-eugenics thesis called Selective Breeding was a top 50 bestseller on Amazon for a while. This is not ringing a bell at all. I'm going to have to look into this. Jasper says his book Bronze Age Mindset was distributed to Trump's West Wing. Okay, Bronze Age Mindset rings a kind of a bell. Maybe I don't think I ever read it. Okay, Aiden says Costin has never read a single book, even the one that he wrote. Connor says those insane fundamentalist Christians I know now exclusively use the Passion Translation, which happily admits to being completely inaccurate. Yeah, I've noticed a few that where it's a quintessentially 20th century, 21st century thing that even the ardent faithful will do the equivalent of what the secular society does when they say, "I want my own reality. I don't want to agree to obvious reality anymore. I want to make my own, and I want to insist on it." The equivalent of that in the world of the faithful is, "I want my own Bible, and I don't care what I want. I want it to say what I want it to say." It's just this incredible solipsism of the 21st century. Maximus Standard says, "What do you think of Willis Barnstone's translation of the New Testament? I really like it. Any more appealing than Alter or Bentley Hart?" I I do think it's more appealing. I wish that I had a really good copy. I had a trade paperback for a while that was just not it was not strong enough to be read. I never see him at the Brattle. I never see him out in the wild. But I like it a lot. It's very thought provoking. Maybe not, depends on what you want in a translation. It would never lead you to wonder that to think this is a great work of literature. but it was really, really endlessly a feast of reading and thinking about it. Technical Farce says that young man from the Brattle, perhaps his nonsensical username would be something like Technical Farce. Oh, I don't think so. What kind of a dork would pick a nonsensical name like that? I ask you. Jasper, but that young man is welcome at the Brattle when he's of legal drinking age. Not at the Brattle, here. He's welcome here at Hyde Cottage when he's of legal drinking age to talk about everything in the world with the bean screaming the whole time. Jasper Antonelli is responding to Aiden. Steve Bronstein says, I have a signed copy of Vidal's Lincoln, but I can't be sure it's authentic because I just ordered it from Amazon some years ago. Where did you go? What was he like in person when you knew him? Assuming that I knew him, are we? If I did, he was largely insufferable. But I knew a lot of writers. I've known and talked to, I've had conversations, sit down conversations with a lot of writers. And a lot of them have been complete sweethearts. So the bar might be high for someone like Vidal. Well, it's 10 past the hour, so we're wrapping up anyway. Let's see here. Max says, I recommend group translations for beginners. NRSV is really good. Okay. Jasper's responding to Aiden. Balin321 says his followers call themselves Vitalists. Oh, God. Oh, this sounds worse and worse. Connor says, unfortunately, those people I know don't base the Bible on what they want it to be, but on what Trump wants it to be. Yeah, his favorite book. Colin, are there any recommended English translations of the Quran? There are a few. Recommended by who? I don't know. the Penguin one has been endlessly revised, almost to a joke. The same translator has done like 5 different revisions, all of which are then enshrined in Penguin Classics. And there's a new one coming out next year that I haven't buckled down to study it. It's not I haven't looked at it because it's next year's book. But, I don't think I could rattle off the translator names. Pickthall is one, but I'm not sure that's critically acclaimed. I really wouldn't know. I'm going to need to know all about this if I come back and if I'm still reviewing and if I review that Quran. I'm going to need to know all about the other translations. Uh, let's see here. Michael Lombardo says my first Steve video was in September 2021. It was your YouTube suggestion. Thanks to the algorithm and thank you, Steve. Well, isn't that nice? Max says I like NT Wright a lot. Yes, so do I. So do I. I'm not wild about his disparaging stance on the Enlightenment, but then again, that's becoming de rigueur to not like the Enlightenment. And Balin 321 says, I discovered you during COVID. You are a large part of why I didn't go crazy due to loneliness. My pleasure. The pleasure was all mine. That's wonderful to hear. Steve Bronstein says you might be interested to know that Peter Singer was on Sam Harris's podcast recently discussing animal liberation. I only heard part of it since that's all he posts for free. I didn't know that. I assume he's doing publicity for his new book, Animal Liberation. What's it now? Animal Liberation Now, something like that. Blue Star Galaxy says some Christians now consider Jesus as being too woke. I just find that funny. Yeah. A Technical Farce says, speaking of writers you may or may not have known, I'm wondering what James Merrill might have been like in person. Some of these shots are coming a little closer, coming a little closer to home. If I knew Jimmy Merrill, he was a delight, an absolutely wonderful person, sweet as could be. Uh, the the term that would come to mind, especially when you knew that he was a great poet, the term that would come to mind was vessel. It didn't seem like he wrestled with his craft. He must have, but it didn't seem that way. And also stinky. My God, talk about a massive tobacco addict. Oh my God. And we'll finish up with Jasper Antonelli. You people are luring me past 10 past the hour, but I really can't. So we'll finish up with Jasper, and we will do this again. I don't know when, unless I change locations. I don't know when. Jasper says, speaking of writers you may have known, I wonder what Cotton Mather was like. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh. The stories I could tell you about Cotton Mather, the stories I could tell you about him, how impossible a person he was, what a raving lunatic he was, and yet a classic example of an unquantifiable human quality. I've never known how to understand it. And Cotton Mather, and maybe even to a greater extent, Increase Mather, had this quality, which is that despite how crazy he was, and despite how cranky he was, and mean in his ideology he was unavoidably likable. You couldn't help but like him. That is just the strangest thing. That just every once in a while you get a person like that, where no matter what they're like, you can't help but like them. I've never been able to figure out what that is. But anyway, that's enough of Cotton Mather. I'm still going to have to wrap this up. I'm sorry. I'm having a blast, and our numbers have not gone down much. But I do have to go. I'm sorry. The bean is acting up, and also I have lots of other things to do before I wrap it up for tonight and prepare myself for what I'm expecting is going to be a horrible day tomorrow. We will see. We will see. If I can, I will report back. But I do have to wrap this up. I'm sorry, everybody, but this has been wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Just what I hoped for. A bright light. So I'm gonna wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you all so much. Oh my. Oh my.